Chapter 648. The sect master wants to see you. I'll bring you to the Manchu's main hall. You don't have to be afraid of anything there. Master will be there. Elder Gu Qingyang patted his chest as he spoke. His white hair and beard fluttered in the wind. It was a huge mountain surrounded by towering peaks. The mountain peak was surrounded by clouds and mist. The mountain range in the distance was majestic and boundless. The surroundings were lush and green. Within the mountain stream, there was a gurgling stream. It was full of vitality. At the peak of the mountain, there was a majestic main hall. It was bathed in the morning light. It was like a huge ferocious beast standing on the mountain peak. When Du Xiaofu arrived at the main hall after looking around, he saw that there were many figures sitting in the main hall. Invisible auras fluctuated from the figures, causing the space in the main hall to freeze. That aura made people want to crawl on the ground. Du Xiaofu looked over and saw many familiar figures. Elder Kong Zhonglei, Hu Sankuan, Elder Chang Mingze and the others were among them. There were also many old men. Their auras were extremely powerful. There were even some whose auras were stronger than Elder Sun and the others. With Du Xiaofu's arrival, all eyes in the main hall fell on Du Xiaofu. Some were curious, some were confused, and some were complicated. Xiaofu, the person in the middle is our ancient heaven sect master. Hurry up and greet him. After Elder Gu Qingyang finished speaking to Du Xiaofu, he walked up to the main hall and sat down on the chair in the middle. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at the middle-aged man sitting at the head of the main hall. His body was thin, but he was extremely sturdy. The middle-aged man wore a green robe with green embroidery. His long black hair was neatly combed into a bun. A few strands of hair fell down from his ears. There was a hint of elegance in his dignified appearance. He was similar to Sima Muhan. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. Beside the middle-aged man, Du Xiaofu also saw a familiar woman standing beside the middle-aged man. Her figure was slender, and she wore a pair of embroidered shoes with soft fox fur sewn on them. On her jade-like wrists, she wore 2 bracelets that shone with white light. It was Sima Muhan. Du Xiaofu greets senior brother sect master and all the elders present. Du Xiaofu bowed to the middle-aged man sitting at the head of the main hall. Du Xiaofu couldn't even sense a trace of the man's aura. To be able to sit at the head of the main hall, Du Xiaofu didn't even need to guess to know that the middle-aged man was the current ancient heaven sect master, Sima Taking. However, as soon as Du Xiaofu finished speaking, the gazes of the people in the main hall suddenly fluctuated. Senior brother sect master, this title definitely had a special meaning in the central continent. With this identity, he could do whatever he wanted in the central continent. Boy, how dare you! Although Elder Gu Qingyang intends to accept you as a disciple, you can't be disrespectful in front of the sect master. The Manchu hasn't officially acknowledged you as Elder Gu Qingyang's disciple. An old man in his 70s, who was dressed in gray and white and had long black hair combed into a bun, immediately reprimanded Du Xiaofu. He didn't want Du Xiaofu to really become the sect master's junior brother. If that happened, it would be difficult to punish him. As soon as the old man called Yuan Buxiu finished speaking, Elder Gu Qingyang immediately shouted, Yuan Buxiu, what do you mean? Isn't it just because your disciple Si Ruofeng was taught a lesson? With your status, why do you have to embarrass a junior? Alright, elders, don't lose your poise in front of a junior. Sima Taxing was helpless. He knew the temper of his martial uncle, Elder Gu Qingyang. If he quarreled with Elder Yuan Buxiu, it would be troublesome. As soon as Sima Taxing's voice fell, Elder Yuan Buxiu, who originally wanted to say something, could only hold back in the end. Du Xiaofu, I heard that this time in the giant rock space, you gathered a lot of inner sect disciples, besieged and seriously injured a bronze list disciple, and snatched his energy copper talisman. Is this true? Sima Taking Xing sized up Du Xiaofu. His expression remained unchanged, but a deep, glass-like light flashed in his eyes. Senior brother sect master, this is completely groundless. The rumor is wrong. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to Sima Taxing, if senior brother sect master doesn't believe it, Sima Muhan knows best. Senior brother sect master can ask her. Du Xiaofu, you, seeing that Du Xiaofu had actually kicked the ball directly to her, Sima Muhan immediately glared at Du Xiaofu fiercely. That guy really did not have good intentions. Du Xiaofu, you're just quibbling. Then tell me, how did the injuries on the bronze list disciples come about? An elder with an ugly expression could not help but ask. His disciple, Su Qing, had been beaten up miserably. Elder, the injuries of the people on the bronze board should be due to their lack of cultivation, so they were injured by others. Du Xiaofu turned to the side and replied to the elder who spoke, his attitude neither servile nor overbearing. What a joke. The bronze list disciples' cultivation is insufficient in front of you. If you hadn't gathered hundreds of new inner sect disciples to besiege them, how could the bronze list disciples be inferior to you? The elder who had just spoken retorted. All the elders present knew that the new disciples would not be able to contend against the bronze list disciples. Du Xiaofu was still rather indifferent as he replied, Elder, if you don't believe me, you can find the people on the bronze list to fight with me on the Sky Marshal Plaza. Then, we'll know whether it's true or not. That elder seemed like he wanted to say something, but he was unable to speak. Actually, he had also heard about how terrifying Du Xiaofu was last night. Even Yin Machin had not been able to do anything to that young brat in 2 hours. If he asked the other people on the bronze list to fight with that brat, they would definitely not have an advantage. He Chuan, what do you think? If you're not convinced, then let your disciple, Su Qing, come to the Sky Marshal Plaza. Elder Gu Qingyang chuckled. The elder called He Chuan by Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Elder Gu Qingyang and did not dare to say anything. He then continued to look at Du Xiaofu and said, then it's a fact that you snatched the bronze energy talisman from the bronze list disciples, right? Of course it's a fact. Du Xiaofu did not deny it and said, but as far as I know, the Manchu does not have any rules that say that new disciples cannot snatch the bronze energy talismans from the bronze list disciples. They can only be snatched by those on the bronze list. After pausing for a moment, Du Xiaofu glanced at the elders present. He was still neither servile nor overbearing as he said with a calm expression, if only the bronze list disciples can snatch and humiliate the new inner sect disciples in the giant rock space, and the new inner sect disciples cannot fight back, then why bother training in the giant rock space? You might as well just give the bronze energy talismans to the bronze list disciples from the start. Is this what the elders want? Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, some of the elders present changed their expressions. Some had complicated gazes, and some wanted to say something. But no matter how many times they opened their mouths, they did not say anything in the end. That makes sense. I wonder if any of the elders have anything else to say. Sima Taxing smiled and looked at the elders in the hall. He said, the giant rock space can train the new inner sect disciples as well as the bronze list disciples. This is the true purpose of the ancestors of the Manchu when they built the giant rock space. In the future, the new inner sect disciples and the bronze list disciples should train each other. As soon as he finished speaking, Sima Taxing looked at Du Xiaofu and said, Du Xiaofu, you broke the rules in the giant rock space as well. It's wrong to rob all the energy copper talismans of the disciples on the bronze rankings, so you should be punished, senior brother master. The rules. Du Xiaofu immediately lost his temper after hearing this. But before he could finish, Sima Taxing interrupted Du Xiaofu and said, little guy, listen to me first. Since you don't know the rules and the rules didn't clearly state it, you can't be blamed for this matter. However, you must bear the responsibility. Sima Taxing smiled and said, how about this? In 6 days, all 128 of you will compete in the next round on the Tianwu Square. If you can take first place at that time, this matter will be treated as if it never happened. At the same time, the Manchu will reward you with a high-grade Dao tool. But if you can't take first place, then all the bronze energy talismans you plundered in the giant rock space as well as the bronze energy talismans plundered by the new inner sect disciples will have to be taken out. At the same time, you will lose all the rewards of the Manchu. Junior brother, this is not fair. Elder Gu Qingyang immediately protested. If he took first place, he knew that Sima Muhan was a monster. It was absolutely not an easy thing to defeat Sima Muhan. Martial Uncle Qingyang, this matter is settled. If Du Xiaofu doesn't even have this little ability, then he doesn't deserve to be your disciple. What do you say? Sima Taxing smiled at Elder Gu Qingyang and said, Martial Uncle, don't you have confidence in your disciple? Elder Gu Qingyang clenched his teeth and nodded, who says I don't have confidence in my disciple? If he takes first place, then so be it. After Elder Gu Qingyang finished speaking, he deliberately gave Du Xiaofu a look of support. It seems that master can't be provoked. Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled. His master had sold him out with just a provocation. Well, Du Xiaofu, Muhan, you two go down first. I still have something to discuss with the elders. Sima Taxing said to Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan beside him. Chapter 649. Yes, father. Sima Muhan nodded and glared at Du Xiaofu before leaving the hall. Du Xiaofu bowed and left with Sima Muhan. Why do you have to drag me into this? That's too unkind. Outside the grand hall, at the peak of the mountain, clouds and mist lingered. Sima Muha slightly raised her beautiful face, and within her lively eyes, her light purple eyes stared hatefully at Du Xiaofu. You also got your share of the energy copper talisman. You can't possibly make me the scapegoat. Furthermore, you are the daughter of the sect leader. He won't do anything to you. Du Xiaofu said with a smile on his face. In your dreams. Sima Muhan's light purple eyes rippled with an intelligent and charming luster. She stared at Du Xiaofu and pouted slightly. Her cherry lips were smeared with a light pink like honey, as if she was inviting people to kiss her. Her red lips slightly parted as she said, 6 days later, I will definitely not let you go. At that time, I will properly deal with you. After she finished speaking, her beautiful figure left and her black hair fluttered behind her. After a few flashes, she disappeared from the peak of the mountain. Du Xiaofu smiled and also left. When Du Xiaofu returned to Tianmu Peak, he unexpectedly met an uninvited guest. It was a lady wearing leather armor. Under the leather armor, an extremely alluring figure was outlined. Her long and straight legs were completely exposed and her face was very moving. She could be called a beauty. Why are you here? Du Xiaofu was very surprised. The person who came was Qiao Yingmeng. I just bought some things from the outer sect and met someone called Gu Zhangyu. He paid a price and asked me to find you. He said that he knows you and wants to meet you. Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu. Gu Zhangyu. Du Xiaofu recalled that the thin youth who had brought him to Tianmu Peak from the outer sect was called Gu Zhangyu. His brows moved slightly as he asked Qiao Yingmeng, where is he now? He's waiting for you outside the inner sect. It seems like his injuries aren't light. He's been waiting for you the entire night. Qiao Yingmeng said. Within the ancient heaven sect, there was an outer sect area and an inner sect area. Outer sect disciples were not allowed to enter the inner sect area as they wished. Once they set foot in the inner sect area, they would be severely punished. When Du Xiaofu exited the inner sect, he immediately saw Gu Zhangyu, who was waiting for him at the exit. Gu Zhangyu was not tall to begin with, and his complexion was sallow and emaciated. At this moment, his complexion was pale, and his breathing was chaotic. It was obvious that his injuries were not light, but his eyes were still clear. Greetings, Uncle Master Du. Seeing Du Xiaofu arrive, Gu Zhangyu immediately bowed respectfully. In just one night, Uncle Master Du's name had spread throughout the ancient heaven sect. Naturally, Gu Zhangyu had also heard of him. What happened to you? Your injuries aren't light. Du Xiaofu sized up Gu Zhangyu. Gu Zhangyu's injuries were not light. Reporting to Uncle Master Du, it's nothing serious. Gu Zhangyu looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled bitterly. He said somewhat embarrassedly, Uncle Master Du, can you lend me some spirit herbs? I want to refine a few healing pills, but I don't have any on me right now. The people in the Manchu who know me don't dare to lend me any. So, I thought I could only borrow some from Uncle Master Du. I can lend you some spirit herbs, but you have to tell me what happened first. Du Xiaofu felt that something wasn't right. It could be said that he was fated to meet this guy. Last time, this guy led the way for him, so he owed him a favor. So, it was necessary for him to understand. If he could help him a little, it could be considered as returning the favor. Is there even a need to guess? He must have offended someone. That's why he's in such a miserable state. Qiao Yingmeng said. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had come because of an outer sect disciple, she was curious. She followed Du Xiaofu back, wanting to watch the show. Gu Zhangyu hesitated for a moment, then looked at Du Xiaofu and Qiao Yingmeng and said, it's the people from the Crouching Tiger Society. Crouching Tiger Society. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly twitched. He faintly felt that this matter had something to do with him. Back then, he had dealt with Zheng Mingzhou and the others from the Crouching Tiger Society. Perhaps this matter had implicated Gu Zhangyu. He asked, could it be that this matter has something to do with me? Gu Zhangyu helplessly nodded his head and said to Du Xiaofu, after Martial Uncle Du dealt with the people from the Crouching Tiger Society, they didn't dare to find trouble with me. However, a few days ago, someone said that Yin Machun, Si Ruofeng, Ji Aoming, and the other senior brothers on the bronze rankings would ruthlessly deal with Martial Uncle Du in the giant rock space. After pausing for a moment, Gu Zhangyu continued, so, the people from the Crouching Tiger Society also came to find me. They said that I no longer had a backer, so they robbed me of everything I had and even heavily injured me. They also warned everyone I knew that if anyone dared to interact with me, they would end up like me. I can only blame myself for being useless. As his voice fell, Gu Zhangyu's expression turned gloomy. Although he was a spirit talisman master, his major was medicine talisman master, and his minor was weapon talisman master. However, his talent wasn't high, and he didn't even have much success in the field of alchemy. Now that he was a 5-star mysterious realm cultivator, he often made mistakes when refining pills that had just reached the spirit grade. He didn't have any status in the Manchu, and no one even dared to ask him to refine pills. No one could withstand the loss of spirit herbs after a failed pill refinement. If it wasn't for his identity as a spirit talisman master, he probably wouldn't even have been able to become an outer sect disciple of the ancient heaven sect. Du Xiaofu's expression gradually turned gloomy. He didn't expect this matter to really be caused by him. Take this pill. Du Xiaofu handed a healing elixir to Gu Zhangyu and said, where is the Crouching Tiger Society? Can you bring me there to take a look? Gu Zhangyu hesitated for a moment, then took the pill from Du Xiaofu's hand and stuffed it into his mouth. He said to Du Xiaofu, Martial Uncle Du, are you going to stand up for me? If so, there's no need for that. Thank you for your good intentions. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and asked Gu Zhangyu, why? Could it be that you're going to endure being bullied by them? Qiao Yingmeng glanced at Du Xiaofu and interrupted, do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? Can you really protect this brat forever? In the Manchu, there are countless factions, big and small, and all of them are related to the inner sect disciples. Even if you protect this brat today and help him vent his anger, what about in the future? I'm afraid those people will only get worse. Then let's make them not dare to do anything in the future. Du Xiaofu said solemnly. It's easy for you to say. This is the Manchu. What can you do? If this matter gets out of hand, it won't be good for anyone. Qiao Yingmeng said. Senior sister Qiao is right. Thank you for your good intentions. Gu Zhangyu bitterly smiled at Du Xiaofu. Qiao Yingmeng heard Gu Zhangyu's words and felt that something was wrong. She immediately recovered and said to Gu Zhangyu, "Brat, I'm speaking up for you. Why are you scolding me? You call me senior sister, but you call him martial uncle. What is the meaning of this?" Senior sister Qiao, Gu Zhangyu didn't think too much about the complicated relationship. He didn't dare to offend either of them. "Alright, I can't be bothered to bicker with you." Qiao Yingmeng ignored Gu Zhangyu and said to Du Xiaofu, "If you want to protect this brat, there is a way. You can form a faction. With your influence in the giant rock space, I'm afraid many inner sect disciples will be willing to join you. When the time comes, you'll become a powerful force. It won't be difficult to protect this brat." Hearing this, Gu Zhangyu looked at Du Xiaofu expectantly. "Forming a faction? I'm afraid I don't have that much time." Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment. Right now, he only wanted to focus on cultivation and become an expert as soon as possible. He probably didn't have that much time to do things like forming a faction. "I don't need much time. Do you think those fellows on the gold ranking, silver ranking, and bronze ranking have the time to care about those things? It's just a name. Strength is the most important." Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu, "If you can have a powerful force, the profits won't be small. There are many outer sect disciples, and the profits from selling pills, spiritual weapons, and talisman weapons are shocking." Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. He seemed to be a little interested. He had also heard that there were more than 100,000 outer sect disciples in the ancient heaven sect. More than 100,000 people were all cultivators. The consumption of pills, spiritual weapons, talisman weapons, Dao weapons, cultivation materials, and so on was definitely a huge number. If he could get involved, the profits would indeed be shocking. Although it was said that cultivators should cultivate wholeheartedly, without cultivation resources, it would be impossible to cultivate wholeheartedly. In the ancient heaven sect, there are more than 100,000 outer sect disciples. Those who can become outer sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect are mostly from powerful families. In terms of cultivation resources, they definitely won't be too shabby. The cultivation resources provided by the Manchu are far from enough. This makes the secret trade of cultivation resources even more popular, and the profits are shocking. Qiao Yingmeng paused for a moment and said to Du Xiaofu, "Do you know where the most profitable trading company is in the ancient heaven sect's territory?" Du Xiaofu shook his head. He really didn't know. "It's in our ancient heaven sect." Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu, "As far as I know, the most profitable trading company in the entire ancient heaven sect is in our ancient heaven sect. The people behind it are the fellows on the gold ranking. The profits are that great." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was a little surprised. "When I saw the reviews, I suddenly realized that little Yu still owed a chapter 2 days ago. But yesterday, he only updated normally and didn't pay back that chapter. I'm ashamed. I'll pay back this chapter immediately. Little Yu, go back to writing. Please forgive me." Chapter 650. Of course the profits are huge. This is the ancient heaven sect. Only the ancient heaven sect knows how to refine many special pills. They are all rare and priceless items in the outside world. The Manchu also has some normal martial techniques. As long as they aren't high-level martial techniques, the Manchu will turn a blind eye to them. These are all priceless treasures in the outside world. Qiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu, "Many of the top businesses in the outside world will take goods from our ancient heaven sect. The ones who sell the goods are the factions of the Manchu. Among them, the factions controlled by the few terrifying masters on the gold ranking are the main ones." The Manchu also doesn't care about this? Du Xiaofu was surprised. How could the Manchu be at ease handing over such huge profits to their disciples? Could it be that the ancient heaven sect was so big that they didn't care? The Manchu will naturally care. The shop set up by the Manchu's disciples need to pay a certain amount of benefits to the Manchu every month. If the shops sell pills, spiritual weapons, martial techniques, spiritual medicines, etc., they also need to be handed over to the Manchu's special department. After the sale is approved, the Manchu will take 50% of the profits, Xiao Yingmeng said. So ruthless? Du Xiaofu was shocked. He thought the Manchu didn't care. He didn't expect the Manchu to be the most ruthless. They didn't do anything, but they took 50% of the profits. This was the most ruthless. Of course. Are you interested in making some noise now? You're also a talisman master, so it'll be more convenient, Xiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered. He was indeed a little interested. With such huge profits, even if the ancient heaven sect took 50%, it would still be shocking. Why are you so eager to let me make some noise? Don't tell me you don't have a motive. Du Xiaofu asked Xiao Yingmeng. Actually, I do have some selfish motives, Xiao Yingmeng smiled. Xiao Yingmeng smiled. She lost some of her wildness and gained some charm. She then looked at Du Xiaofu and said, let me put it this way. My family runs a trading company. Do you understand? You want me to make some noise and then help your family? Du Xiaofu asked. Just helping each other. My family's business. My family's business. My family's business is not small. Is. My family's business. Many things are in ancient heaven sect. My family's business in the outside world. My family's business. My family's business is. Xiao Yingmeng looked at Du Xiaofu and said, if you can make some noise, then I can have the family's trading company ask for goods from you. The profits in between are not small. As for how far you can go in the future, that will depend on you. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered. He seemed to be thinking about something. He then looked at Xiao Yingmeng. Why me? Looking at Du Xiaofu, Xiao Yingmeng smiled. Because you dared to touch the bronze board. You dared to touch Si Ruofeng. Your potential is limitless. I believe in my eyes. Just because your words are so meaningful and honest, I'll agree to it. Du Xiaofu shamelessly smiled and said to Xiao Yingmeng, but I also have a condition. If I do something, you have to be the first to support me. Are you afraid that I'll get involved with my family? Xiao Yingmeng smiled. Just don't lose everything, Du Xiaofu said generously. Xiao Yingmeng looked at Du Xiaofu with a complicated expression. After a while, she nodded. Okay, I agree. Martial Uncle Du, Senior Sister Qiao, can you count me in? Hearing the conversation between Du Xiaofu and Xiao Yingmeng, Gu Zhangyu didn't dare to interrupt. Only now did he have the chance to say that he wanted to participate. Okay, you can join. You can be considered an elder in the future. Du Xiaofu nodded with a smile. What name do you plan to use to make some noise? I'm afraid that just the three of us won't be enough. We need to recruit more people. The inner sect disciples can only make a name for themselves. The real ones are the outer sect disciples. Xiao Yingmeng said to Du Xiaofu. Let's use the name World Society. Du Xiaofu hesitated for a moment before saying, as for the noise, let's make some noise today. It'll also be good to tell others that there will be a world society in the ancient heaven sect in the future. Dusk. The sun was setting in the west. At this moment, the outer sect was in an uproar. Du Xiaofu had directly defeated over 100 outer sect disciples of the Crouching Tiger Society at noon. He had smashed the trading company controlled by the Crouching Tiger Society into a mess. At the same time, a world society had also been established in the ancient heaven sect, which immediately caused a lot of discussion. In addition to what Du Xiaofu had done in the giant rock space and the news of his battle with Yin Machen, Du Xiaofu's name was definitely the most talked about in the ancient heaven sect. Just as the outer sect was in an uproar, Du Xiaofu had already returned to his little nest in the inner sect. He entered the ancient desolate space and continued to comprehend the mysterious move, as well as the various beast energies in the ancient desolate space. Especially after reaching the martial lord realm, Du Xiaofu needed time to comprehend some of the beast energies of the golden-winged rock. Time passed slowly, and Du Xiaofu entered the ancient desolate space. Naturally, he didn't know that the outside world was in an uproar because of him. The Crouching Tiger Society's defeat had implicated many people, but in the end, the matter could only be settled carelessly. At this time, there were naturally not many people who dared to provoke Du Xiaofu. However, the newly established World Society was unusually popular. It was rumored that no less than 100 inner sect disciples had joined on the second day. The most shocking thing was that among the newly promoted inner sect disciples, there were a total of 9 talents who had joined the World Society. Other than Xiao Yingmeng, there were also Hao Bian, Benyu, Mo Wen, Mu Jiejia, and the others. With the 9 talents joining at the same time, the newly established World Society was immediately in the limelight. It even attracted the attention of many of the Manchu's elders. Of course, the World Society had been in the limelight recently, but there was another matter that was even more eye-catching. That was a few days later, among the newly promoted inner sect disciples, the 128 people who had come out of the giant rock space would compete with each other. It was said that this time, many of the Manchu's powers had opened many bets as usual, betting on who would take first place. And this time, other than the 4 human kings, the most popular one was undoubtedly Sima Muhan, followed by Du Xiaofu. Among the newly promoted disciples, those who had the qualifications to enter the 128 could not be seen these days. They were all making their final preparations. Several days passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, the date had arrived. In front of a quiet courtyard on a mountain peak, Sima Muhan stood quietly. Her light purple eyes reflected a moving luster under the sunset. Little Muhan, tomorrow is the day of the competition. How are your preparations? Sima taking Xing appeared in front of the courtyard, a smile on his handsome face. Father, Sima Muhan looked back and smiled. She walked lightly to Sima taking Xing's side and said, actually, there's no need to prepare anything. There shouldn't be any problems. Although Su Chuyun, Feng Xiangyu, and the others aren't weak, they aren't much of a threat. Du Xiaofu, how are you paying attention to him in the giant rock space? Don't tell me you also think he's not a threat to you. Sima taking Xing laughed. Sima Muhan's eyebrows slightly moved, her eyes rippling as she said, that guy is indeed unfathomable. He has a lot of methods and is extremely fierce, like a fierce beast. Chapter 651. It seems like you have a high opinion of him. Sima Taxing knew his precious daughter very well. It was not easy for her to have a high opinion of someone. I'm too lazy to comment on him. That guy is not only shameless and cruel, but also extremely despicable. Thinking of everything about that guy, Sima Muhan could only use these few words to describe him. Haha, hearing this, Sima Taxing laughed and said to his beloved daughter, that guy is extremely cunning, but he's not just smart. Perhaps he can achieve great things in the future. If there's someone in your batch who can achieve great things in the future, I'm afraid it's most likely him. Father, you have a high opinion of that guy too? Sima Muhan looked at her father curiously. It was rare for her to see her father praise someone, especially so deeply. He's just a young guy, but he's neither servile nor overbearing in front of me and so many elders. He can even talk eloquently. In the giant rock space, he was able to drag you down with him. The newly established World Society has 9 talents joining it. These things seem ordinary, but they're actually not. Sima Taxing's deep eyes flashed like glass. He said, this guy is definitely not simple. As for how much he's hiding, we'll know tomorrow. Seeing her father praising that guy, Sima Muhan couldn't help but pout. She said, I'd like to see how capable that cruel and shameless guy is. PFFF, in the misty space, Du Xiaofu suddenly sneezed twice. He rubbed his nose and muttered, who's scolding me? How's your comprehension? Zhen Qingchuan's illusory body floated in front of Du Xiaofu and asked. Not bad, but there's not enough time. I'll have to go into seclusion some other day. Du Xiaofu clenched his fists, feeling the progress he had made, and a smile appeared on his face. This time, Du Xiaofu spent about 2 months in the ancient desolate space. In addition to the mysterious move, the methods in the ancient desolate space, and some of the methods of the golden-winged great rocks, Du Xiaofu had also spent some time comprehending the pulse spirit. He had made significant progress. You have already reached the peak of the martial lord realm. You should spend more time comprehending the pulse spirit. Otherwise, breaking through to the martial king realm will be extremely difficult. The degree of comprehension of the pulse spirit is directly related to your breakthrough to the martial king realm. Zhen Qingchen said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu nodded. After packing up, he left the ancient desolate space. After leaving the desolate ancient space, Du Xiaofu went to see his third senior apprentice brother, Yu Wanli. He told him that his master, Gu Qingyang, had told him to prepare well for the competition tomorrow. Junior apprentice brother, you must win. No matter what, even if you can't get first place, you must at least get second place. Before Yu Wanli left, he reminded Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu was naturally looking forward to tomorrow's competition. Not to mention that the sect leader had already said that if he didn't get first place, he would be in trouble. Night shrouded the mountains. In the quiet courtyard, a blue-clothed youth stood there. His long and narrow eyes flickered with a cold light as he said, "Humph. Do you really think that you can take the lead tomorrow? Tomorrow, everyone will know that I, Su Chuyun, am the true sovereign personage. Tomorrow is when the true victor will be decided. Du Xiaofu, you won't be complacent for long." The next morning, in the ancient heaven sect, the morning clouds rose, and thousands of mountains woke up. The Tianwu Square was already crowded early in the morning. Outer sect disciples could also participate in today's competition. This was a grand occasion for the ancient heaven sect, so naturally, all of the hundreds of thousands of outer sect disciples would participate. No one wanted to miss out on such an exciting competition. Therefore, when the sun rose, the vast Tianwu Square was already crowded with people. All of them were extraordinary young men and women. I wonder who will get first place this time. It should be one of the 4 human kings, young Miss Sima Muhan, and Du Xiaofu. In the end, the top 16 winners will get a chance to enter the ancient heaven sect's secret area to forge. The champion will even get a high-grade Dao tool. But this time, there's an outstanding genius, 4 human kings, and young Miss Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. That's a total of 17 people. Looks like even the outstanding human kings will have to stop outside. It's said that Du Xiaofu was able to resist Yin Machin for 2 hours in the giant rock space. There's a great chance for him to get first place this time. I heard that Du Xiaofu was able to resist senior brother Yin Machin for 2 hours by using a symbol array. As for young Miss Sima Muhan, she relied on her own strength to resist senior brother Sima Muhan for 2 hours. In my opinion, perhaps young Miss Sima Muhan is better. Look, there are quite a few disciples from the previous competition. Not only that. Don't you see the people on the mountain peak in front? Those are experts on the silver ranking. They just don't want to stand with us. They're all here to watch the show. The surrounding crowd discussed animatedly. It was extremely lively. The crowd was also divided into many areas. Within the ancient heaven sect, there were many large and small forces. Naturally, they all stood together. Look, the elders are here. There are also those 128 fellows. I wonder who will be able to enter the top 16. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. In the distant sky, a large number of figures flew over. Many extremely powerful demonic beast mounts flew across the sky, carrying extraordinary elders to a corner of the square. At this moment, there was a high platform that had already been prepared. The few elders at the front were Gu Qingyang, Kang Zhonglei, Hao Zongwei, Hu Sankuan, Yan Mingze, and the others. Whoosh whoosh, Following behind the elders were 128 outstanding figures. They all slowly landed in the center of the Sky Marshal Square. Du Xiaofu was among them. Standing beside him were Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, Benyu, and the others. 128 people landed in the square. They slightly raised their heads and looked at the surrounding crowd. Their fighting spirit quietly rose in their hearts. Everyone knew that the competition was about to begin. If they wanted to stand out, they would have to give it their all. Greetings, elders and protectors. Around the Sky Marshal Square, a dozen outer and inner sect disciples respectfully bowed. Dispense with the formalities. Elder Gu Qingyang waved his long sleeves and sat on a large chair. One by one, the elders took their seats and looked around. For some reason, these elders felt a little uneasy in their hearts today. Especially Yan Mingze, Hao Zongwei, Kang Zhonglei, and the other elders. Their faces were always a little uneasy. It was as if everyone was worried about something at this moment. Du Xiaofu also stood among the 128 people. He looked around and saw Su Chuyun and the others. He felt a little strange in his heart. Su Chuyun and the others had a total of 9 energy copper talismans on them. Logically speaking, it wouldn't be easy to rank in the end. Everyone had 9 energy copper talismans. Not to mention that this time, at least 300 people had a lot of energy copper talismans on them. Even if Su Chuyun and the others kept their energy copper talismans, they wouldn't be able to rank in the top 128. Du Xiaofu whispered his doubts to Judge Hao, who was beside him, and asked, Fatty, can their energy copper talismans be auctioned in the top 128? In the past, the new inner sect disciples were also able to rob the new inner sect disciples in the giant rock space. However, under normal circumstances, they would only take action in the last 2 hours of the giant rock space. I reckon that they had already sensed the danger and had already taken action against the other disciples in the giant rock space. Judge Hao glanced at Su Chuyun and the others and said to Du Xiaofu in a serious tone. I see. Du Xiaofu nodded his head slightly. Just as he finished speaking, he heard an elder's voice from a corner of the high platform, accompanied by profound energy. All right, it's about time now. You should all know the rules. The 128 people will fight among themselves first. In the end, 16 people will win. After that, the 16 of you will fight for first place. If you have any questions, you can raise them now. Elder Chang Mingze said in a loud voice from the high platform. His voice was so loud that it could be clearly heard by the entire Tianwu Plaza. No one had any questions. Even Du Xiaofu had just followed his master, Gu Qingyang, and third senior brother to the Tianwu Plaza and learned the rules of the competition. The rules of the competition were very simple. It was fine as long as one did not intentionally harm the lives of others. However, if someone was not tactful and insisted on persistently pestering others, they could only bear the consequences themselves. Therefore, in this kind of situation, once someone felt that they were in trouble, no one would dare to forcefully resist. Otherwise, if something happened in the end, they could only blame themselves for asking for it. Since no one has any questions, I will now announce that the competition will begin. The 16 people who are still standing in the end will win. Elder Chang Mingze's voice spread out and resounded in the large plaza. Boom! As Elder Chang Mingze's voice rang out, the surrounding plaza immediately erupted in cheers. The sound waves shook the heavens and the scene was extremely hot-blooded. In the center of the plaza, the 128 people immediately focused their attention and their expressions froze. Profound energy had already begun to spread out from some of their bodies as they summoned their weapons. Their gazes were vigilant and sharp as they looked at the people around them. The surrounding crowd of spectators was extremely surging for the 128 people. They were all from the younger generation. It was impossible for anyone to be completely calm in such a competition, including Du Xiaofu. Far away in the dark forest, Du Xiaofu had once thought about how far he would be able to go when he competed with the experts of the same generation in the Central Plains. And now, Such an opportunity was right in front of him. Today's update is complete. Chapter 652. In the middle of the square, the 128 people's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. The elders and protectors on the stage were also whispering to each other. The surrounding spectators' eyes were also burning with passion. The annual event had already begun. Whoever could enter the top 16 would have the lead, and it would depend on their own strength. In the crowd, Du Xiaofu, Hao Guan, Qiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, Mu Jiejia, and Benyu looked at each other and nodded with smiles. President, out of the 11 talents this time, 9 of them have joined our World Club. We have to make sure that our people can enter the top 16. Qiao Yingmeng's voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. While you've been doing nothing these few days, our world society already has 170 inner sect disciples and over 300 outer sect disciples. Our power isn't weak at all. Du Xiaofu was surprised when he heard that. Then, a smile appeared on his face. Although there were only 300 outer sect disciples, there were 170 inner sect disciples. These were the inner sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect. If placed outside, any one of them would be as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Boom! At the same time, there were already people who couldn't help but make a move. Many disciples' profound qi surged and runes soared into the sky. Bursts of fiery clashes immediately erupted. Noise filled the sky. Profound qi clashed and talisman weapons moved. Low energy sounds rang out. In the middle of the square, a great battle was about to break out. Figures flickered and the sound of metal clashing was accompanied by broken runes. It was like fireworks. In such a chaotic battle, everyone went all out from the start. No one dared to go all out. Otherwise, they would be eliminated. Figures clashed one after another. However, not many people dared to provoke the talented people in the square. However, that didn't mean that no one dared to provoke them. Some inner sect disciples teamed up. They seemed to have been prepared. They also pounced towards Mo Wen, Hao Guan, Benyu, and the other talented people. Rumble, Hao Guan, Mo Wen, Benyu, and the others all made their moves. Each of their tyrannical auras erupted as they launched their attacks. Profound qi whistled unceasingly as runes soared into the sky like a blazing sun. Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, and the others made their moves. Their graceful figures drew a tempting arc in the air as they ruthlessly swept towards their opponents. As geniuses, Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, and Mo Wen's attacks were not something normal disciples could touch. Wherever they went, they would easily defeat normal inner sect disciples. Attack! Feng Xiangyu, Su Chuyun, Shu Yang, and Shi Yunsheng also began to attack. Their auras erupted, and their attacks were earth-shattering. Such a chaotic battle in the plaza caused the surrounding outer sect disciples to be unable to take their eyes off it. Many excited shouts also sounded out from the plaza, with many of them shouting themselves hoarse, their voices echoing endlessly in the air above the plaza. However, in this absolute battle, no one saw anyone attacking Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. Among the 128 people, the only ones that did not make a move were the two of them. The battle in the surroundings caused the wind and clouds to surge as energy swept across the plaza. Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu stood in the middle of the plaza. No one dared to make a move against the two of them. This also caused the surrounding spectators and the elders and protectors on the high platform to whisper among themselves. Not long after, some of the 128 people began to retreat from the stage with heavy injuries. They did not dare to be entangled with the battle. Bang, 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 low muffled sounds were like thunder as more and more people left the plaza. The number of people remaining in the plaza was getting lesser and lesser. From the looks of it, only geniuses and talented people can enter the top 16. In the end, the others will not be able to contend against them. On the high platform, an elder nodded with a smile. Many of the elders and protectors already had an idea of the number of people in the top 16. Time slowly passed. When there were only 17 people left in the battle of the 128 people, the entire plaza suddenly became silent for no reason. The last dozen or so people, without a doubt, were left with 11 outstanding talents, plus Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu. Only the last 16 of the 17 people would be able to enter a secret place to cultivate. Someone must be eliminated. The 17 people in the plaza looked at each other, their gazes becoming extremely complicated. Someone must be eliminated. Su Chuyun moved. As her voice faded, the surrounding space trembled. A palm print with a fierce aura directly slammed towards Mu Jiejia, who was not far away. She was actually going to directly attack Mu Jiejia. Facing Su Chuyun's instant attack, Mu Jiejia's expression changed. Her graceful body rapidly retreated, drawing an arc in the air. At the same time, a soul-shaking energy wave swept out. Her delicate hand wrapped in talisman mysterious runes, resisting the former. All of this happened extremely quickly. The instant the two of them exchanged blows caused the surrounding gazes to change color. Bang! Under a low muffled sound, the two collided. Energy swept out and Mu Jiejia's delicate body was directly pushed back. A spiritual talisman master would only be at a disadvantage when fighting against a martial artist. Pfft! Mu Jiejia spat out a mouthful of blood. Her delicate face had a grave expression. She knew that she was not Su Chuyun's opponent in a direct confrontation. Whoosh! With the sound of wind breaking, a delicate and graceful figure appeared in front of Mu Jiejia. It was Qiao Yingmeng, holding two strange scimitars in her hands. Junior sister Yingmeng, are you going to join forces with Mu Jiejia? Su Chuyun looked at Qiao Yingmeng with an extremely complicated gaze. What was complicated was hatred and pain. Not just her, but all of us. Judge Hao shouted. Behind him, Running Bull, Mo1, and the other 6 heroes all came to Qiao Yingmeng's side. They had all joined the World Society. At this time, they naturally had to join forces. Although Su Chuyun was a human king talent, the 9 of them were definitely not afraid of Su Chuyun alone. What do you mean? Facing Judge Hao and the other 7 heroes, Su Chuyun's expression was definitely not good. You want to touch my World Society's people? What do you think we mean? Running Bull was not afraid at this time. With a smile in his eyes, his chi fluctuated, ready to attack at any time. Anyway, there was nothing to be afraid of since it was 9 against 1. How is it? Are you alright? A faint voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Unknowingly, Du Xiaofu had already arrived in front of the injured Mu Jiejia. It's nothing serious, just a small injury. Mu Jiejia nodded and said. That's good. Du Xiaofu smiled and turned around under everyone's gaze. His clear eyes fell on Su Chuyun, then he turned to Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, and the others and said, leave it to me. Qiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, and the others nodded and directly retreated. Du Xiaofu, what do you mean? Su Chuyun looked at Du Xiaofu with a sneer on her face. Her gaze was obviously extremely unsightly. Perhaps Su Chuyun did not expect that she would provoke the other 8 heroes just for Mu Jiejia. Even Du Xiaofu was provoked. Nothing, I just want to beat you up. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. In the giant rock space, he was already somewhat displeased with Su Chuyun. Now that Mu Jiejia had joined the World Society, Su Chuyun would definitely protect Mu Jiejia. Since one of them would be eliminated, he naturally would not let Su Chuyun go. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Su Chuyun paused for a moment. There was no anger in her long and narrow eyes. Instead, she revealed a sneer and shook her head slightly. She sneered and said, Du Xiaofu, you can only rely on a few talisman arrays. Do you really think you can do anything to me? I, the human king, am not someone you can do anything to. Since you jumped out, then I'll deal with you first today. Looking at Su Chuyun in front of him, Du Xiaofu's clear eyes slightly moved. There was a faint trace of disgust in them, and a trace of coldness fluctuated in his eyes without leaving a trace. Then, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He slightly raised his head and said, "I'll let you attack first. Otherwise, I'll have to set up a talisman array." Hearing Du Xiaofu's mocking words, Su Chuyun's face also surged with coldness. Her gaze was gloomy as she stared at Du Xiaofu. She was indeed worried that Du Xiaofu would set up a talisman array first. "All right, I'll fulfill your wish. Let's see what you have to fight me other than talisman arrays." As Su Chuyun's voice fell, a majestic aura accompanied by dazzling talisman symbols erupted from her body like a volcano. Boom! In an instant, the square rumbled as a mighty aura swept across the square. Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. Su Chuyun's true cultivation is Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. It turns out that Su Chuyun has already reached the Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. As the mighty aura surged out from Su Chuyun's body, it immediately caused the surrounding spectators, as well as the elders and protectors on the high platform, to be astonished. "I didn't expect this guy to have been hiding his strength all this time." Feng Xiangyu, Qiao Yingmeng, Shi Yunsheng, Xu Yang, Hao Bian and the others were extremely surprised when they felt the aura from Su Chuyun's body. "Ha, Du Xiaofu, I've already stepped into the Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm. Do you think you can do anything to me?" Su Chuyun's Mysterious Initial Martial King Realm aura swept across the square. The wind and clouds surged in the sky above the square. The vast aura caused the spectators to tremble. The aura was extremely frightening. Today's update has arrived. Looking for fresh flowers, looking for recommendations. Chapter 653. I didn't expect this fellow to have reached the Martial King realm. His improvement is not bad. On the high platform, Elder Hu Sankuan was shocked. He couldn't help but exclaim. Boom! A low and deep muffled sound resounded in the space around Su Chuyun. At the same time, a palm print wrapped in dazzling talisman markings swept towards Du Xiaofu with a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In front of the palm print, a shockwave whizzed out and swept in all directions. In a short moment, under the shocked gazes of many people, the terrifying palm print rushed towards Du Xiaofu. The terrifying energy swept down, causing Du Xiaofu's purple robe to flutter. Du Xiaofu moved. Just as the palm print appeared before him, his right arm shook like a cattail leaf fan, causing layer upon layer of golden talisman markings to erupt. They were like the wings of a golden rock, and a domineering and fierce aura gushed out like a volcano. In the end, it whistled as it swept out and slapped out. Walala! The shockwave swept out and the runes were dazzling. A terrifying force swept out in all directions, causing Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, Judge Hao, and the others who were slightly closer to them to take a step back. Dang dang! Amidst the berserk strength, Du Xiaofu staggered a step back, while Su Chuyun's body directly staggered a dozen steps back. When he stabilized his body with the last step, he let out a muffled groan, and a wisp of dark red blood directly spat out from the corner of his mouth. Puchi! When the blood flowed out, everyone was shocked. Su Chuyun's gloomy face suddenly became extremely ugly. Du Xiaofu is so strong. At this moment, everyone was stunned. Many elders and protectors on the high platform were stunned. Most of the elders and protectors had only heard of Du Xiaofu's strength. Even when he defeated Yi Xian, who was at the Martial King realm, in one move, it was said that it was because the spiritual talisman master's attack affected Yi Xian's mind and soul. That was why he could take the opportunity to injure Yi Xian. And now, under the gazes of everyone present, everyone could clearly see that Du Xiaofu had casually dealt with Su Chuyun's attack, injuring her with a raise of his hand. Just how fierce and overbearing was the terrifying aura that had erupted from his body earlier? Overestimating yourself and looking for a beating. Judge Hao glanced at Su Chuyun, who was pushed back. In the giant rock space, he was the clearest about Du Xiaofu's strength. Even if Su Chuyun's martial king realm strength was the martial king realm, Judge Hao was not worried. Back in the giant rock space, Feng Yutang, Bai Furong, Su Qing, and the others were all weak. None of them was weaker than Su Chuyun now. If Su Chuyun had seen how Du Xiaofu dealt with Feng Yutang, Bai Furong, Su Qing, and the others with his own eyes, he would not dare to be so arrogant now. Su Chuyun wiped the traces of blood from the corner of his mouth. His sneering gaze gradually darkened, as if he had just fallen from heaven to hell. At this moment, the densely packed gazes from all around landed on him, making him feel as if they were mocking and ridiculing him. He was a human king realm genius and had always been at the peak of his generation in the ancient sky sect. But now, facing a kid who had suddenly joined the ancient sky sect, he was repeatedly defeated. Whether it was strength or junior sister Qiao Yingmeng, continue. Su Chuyun gritted his teeth and shouted coldly. Mysterious talisman patterns began to flicker around his body, and the energy of heaven and earth was activated. In a short time, a terrifying phantom of a meridian spirit demon beast appeared in the sky amidst a mighty aura. Roar, the meridian spirit demon beast roared. This was a huge demon leopard with a greenish-white body. It had 4 wings that were connected to each other. The 4 wings were covered in feathers and dazzling runes. With a flap of its wings, a fierce wind whistled in the sky like a hurricane. When such a terrifying phantom of a meridian spirit demon beast appeared, the pressure caused the hearts of countless onlookers to tremble. 4-winged storm leopard, a demon beast on the heavenly beast ranking. This is Su Chuyun's meridian spirit. I didn't expect Su Chuyun to actually use his meridian spirit. This is a desperate move. Seeing Su Chuyun use his meridian spirit, the surrounding people whispered in shock. There were not many inner sect disciples in the ancient sky sect who could possess the meridian spirit of a demon beast on the heavenly beast ranking. How terrifying were those demon beasts on the heavenly beast ranking? It was really too difficult to obtain their blood essence. Go! Su Chuyun coldly shouted as she activated her meridian spirit. The huge meridian spirit 4-winged storm leopard immediately flapped its wings. Accompanied by a terrifying energy hurricane, it directly pounced towards Du Xiaofu. That energy hurricane was not an ordinary hurricane. Within the energy hurricane, those who were not strong enough would be instantly suppressed into a bloody mist if they were caught in it. Du Xiaofu hasn't activated his meridian spirit yet. Can he contend against it? That Du Xiaofu wouldn't even put Su Chuyun's meridian spirit in his eyes, right? Everyone was shocked. Facing Su Chuyun's meridian spirit 4-winged storm leopard, Du Xiaofu did not have any intention of activating his own meridian spirit. Roar, the 4-winged storm leopard roared. Its rolling pressure filled the sky as it directly suppressed Du Xiaofu. It would be great if it's a real 4-winged storm leopard. Du Xiaofu was a little disappointed. It had been a long time since he drank the blood essence of a demonic beast on the heavenly beast list. At the same time, Du Xiaofu made his move. A dazzling golden light burst out from his body like a sun. His clear eyes were filled with golden runes. As the hand seal condensed, Du Xiaofu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. Stomping his foot, he leaped into the air and directly pounced towards the terrifying 4-winged storm leopard. His right arm shook and his 5 fingers slightly bent. On his fingertips, mysterious runes flickered as if they wanted to tear the space apart. Energy ripples visible to the naked eye spread out from the claw. Great rock chaos-shattering claw. A low shout came from Du Xiaofu's mouth. At this moment, the aura on Du Xiaofu's body was like that of a peerless ferocious beast. A claw stretched out from his hand and golden light burst out. The dazzling mysterious runes were like golden lightning that wreaked havoc. It was as if a golden-winged rock was about to spread its wings and soar into the 9 heavens. The eruption of such a domineering and terrifying aura immediately attracted many surprised gazes. Such a domineering and ferocious aura should not appear in humans. It could only exist in the bodies of demonic beast sovereigns. Under such a claw, the densely packed figures in the surroundings all felt their meridians and souls tremble. Their meridians and souls felt uncomfortable and fearful for no reason. It was as if they were facing a king. Chi chi chi. Under the terrifying claw, the oppressive aura descended. A trace of fear flashed across the phantom of the four-winged storm leopard. Then, golden light burst out from the latter's claw. Like countless golden lightning snakes, it ruthlessly landed on the phantom of the four-winged storm leopard in an incomparably domineering manner. The Great Rock's chaos-crushing claw was a domineering technique of the Golden-Winged Rock clan. It was something that Du Xiaofu had comprehended and cultivated during his seclusion in the ancient desolate space a few days ago. The Great Rock's chaos-crushing claw was undoubtedly stronger than the sky-shaking wings. It was rumored that in ancient times, when the golden-winged rock flapped its wings and descended, its sharp claws could capture and tear apart dragons. From this, one could see how powerful and terrifying the Great Rock's claws were. Chi chi chi, the terrifying claw fell. Facing the enormous phantom of the four-winged storm leopard, after a short stalemate, it directly tore the phantom of the four-winged storm leopard to shreds with an unstoppable force. Like a hot knife through butter, everything was routed. The runes that filled the sky were shattered. A terrifying energy storm spread out in an arc in the air. Chi chi, as his meridians and souls shattered, Su Chuyun spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned deathly pale. His gloomy eyes suddenly became lifeless at this moment. With his meridians and souls shattered, his pride was also shattered. Chapter 654. Su Chuyun never thought that his pulse spirit would be so weak in front of Du Xiaofu. Gu gu, the densely packed spectators around the Tianwu Square were stunned. After a short moment of silence, the sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard one after another. Su Chuyun's pulse spirit couldn't even withstand a single blow. How could people not be shocked? On the square, Sima Muhan's pale golden eyes looked at the purple-robed young man in front of her. There was a slight fluctuation in her eyes. Impossible, this is definitely impossible. How can I lose? I definitely won't lose. I definitely won't lose. Su Chuyun muttered to himself. On his deathly pale face, his long and narrow eyes began to be suffused with venomous veins. Both of his eyes stared intently at Du Xiaofu. A trace of fresh blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, causing his originally handsome face to appear even more sinister at this moment. Chi la la, a terrifying aura once again spread out from Su Chuyun's body. On the surface of his body, mysterious talisman inscriptions started to flicker. It looked extremely strange. Is Su Chuyun going to use his martial pulse? Looking at the commotion caused by Su Chuyun, the gazes of the many elders and protectors on the high platform changed at this time. All the elders and protectors present were well aware of how powerful Su Chuyun's martial vein was. Fusion martial pulse, petrification. As Su Chuyun shouted in a low and deep voice, the light on her body shone brightly. The mysterious runes on the talisman condensed and changed before covering the surface of her body, causing her body to swell as if it was filled with air. In a short period of time, under many surprised gazes, Su Chuyun's body expanded to a size of a few hundred feet. He was like a giant standing in the air. His body swelled and layers of rocks covered him, turning him into a huge stone man. Then, the huge body landed on the ground and stood in the square like a stone statue. Boom! The huge body stood in the square, causing the hard square covered by the talisman formation to tremble. It was as if the square was going to crack. Su Chuyun has activated his petrification martial pulse. Can Du Xiaofu still fight against the natural disposition of a human king? With the activation of his petrification martial pulse, his defense is comparable to the strongest demonic beast on the heavenly beast ranking. The surrounding people whispered with shocked gazes. All of them were staring at the purple-robed young man in the middle of the square. At that moment, could Du Xiaofu still fight against Su Chuyun, who had activated his petrification martial pulse? After all, Su Chuyun was a true human king. Du Xiaofu, as a human king. As a human king. You can't fight against me. Me. Of the stones of stone. Of stones, the huge stone. The stone's Yan's stone as, the stone of the stone of the giant's S of stone. Of the of the zes like of the stone of the, so of the rock of the giant, of his of the his giant. The runes on the huge stone man's body flashed and the pressure spread out. The surrounding onlookers with weaker strength could not even raise their heads. Du Xiaofu looked at the gigantic stone man in front of him. Its gigantic body towered above the square and it was almost the same as him in the air. The mighty pressure it gave off was indeed enough to cause one's heart to tremble. Petrification martial pulse. It doesn't seem weak. Du Xiaofu muttered. He had seen the sky serpent Sex Lu Kuan's immortal martial pulse and Si Ruofeng's storm martial pulse. The petrification martial pulse on Su Chuyun's body was also extremely special. It made one unable to feel what kind of terrifying explosive power was contained in the huge stone man's body. Now, let's see how you fight. In front of me, you'll have to crawl. The shout resounded in all directions of the square. After Su Chuyun was petrified, the huge stone man's fist, which was as big as a bull, was covered in dazzling talisman formation. Instantly, it violently blasted towards Du Xiaofu with a terrifying force. Boom! The terrifying fist seemed to be able to shatter the space. It was enough to suppress and destroy everything. With a rumbling sound of thunder, it rushed towards Du Xiaofu like a falling meteorite. AO! At the same time when Su Chuyun attacked, dazzling golden talisman formation bloomed around Du Xiaofu's body. His mouth was like a dragon's roar in the ninth heaven. At the same time, a loud shout like the trumpet of a divine elephant was heard. Boom! In a short moment, the sound of wind and thunder resounded like the sound of Sanskrit. An incomparably domineering fist print condensed in Du Xiaofu's hand, accompanied by an imperceptible trajectory and talisman formation fluctuation. Finally, like a collision of meteorites, it violently collided with the huge stone man's bull-like fist. Bang! Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, Du Xiaofu's domineering fist print was incomparably terrifying golden energy. It was like a shockwave in the void that rushed out in all directions. It directly blocked the huge stone man's fist in midair. The domineering aura looked down on everything. In a short moment, the domineering fist print suppressed all living things. A majestic golden light burst out and shattered the stone man's fist. Ka, the huge stone man's fist shattered. The majestic golden light burst out like a bomb. Then, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the huge stone man began to crumble inch by inch. It turned into broken talisman formation and dissipated. Like a turtle that had been stripped of its shell, Su Chuyun's body was revealed. Then, her body was directly sent flying like a kite with a broken string. She flew for dozens of feet before landing heavily on the ground. At the same time, blood spurted out of her mouth like a fountain. Pfft! Su Chuyun's body was dripping with blood. When she fell, the ground shook with a loud bang. If it wasn't for the talisman formation restriction in this square, it was likely that it would have cracked open. All around the square, there was a deathly silence. At this moment, many gazes were looking at the purple-robed young man in the low sky in astonishment. Just now, the purple-robed young man's punch was so domineering and powerful. Su Chuyun activated her petrification martial veins and displayed the talent of a human king. In the end, she was still severely injured by Du Xiaofu's punch. Gulp gulp, after a short moment of silence, the surroundings were filled with the sound of saliva being swallowed. How terrifying was his strength to severely injure the petrified Su Chuyun with one punch. Originally, some people thought that Du Xiaofu was famous for defeating Yi Xian because of the spiritual talisman master's attack on the mind and soul. In the giant rock space, he had gathered hundreds of people to work together to severely injure the expert on the bronze list. In the end, when he fought against Yin Machin, he only relied on the talisman array to protect himself for 2 hours. But now, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, everyone saw that Su Chuyun, who was at the mysterious Martial King realm, was severely injured by one punch. Du Xiaofu's strength was so terrifying. Good job, Martial Uncle Du. Martial Uncle Du, Martial Uncle Du, Martial Uncle Du. Immediately, cheers sounded from the crowd. Such powerful strength immediately captured the hearts of many disciples. In the crowd, many female disciples' eyes began to shine. Many of their eyes began to ripple. What kind of martial skill did that kid use just now? It's too terrifying. I'm afraid it's not simple. That martial skill is not simple. I can't see through it. On the high platform, the elders and protectors could not help but whisper in shock. The martial skill that Du Xiaofu had just displayed was something that even these experienced and knowledgeable people like them, who believed that their eyesight was not bad, could not see through its origin and clues. Yu Wanli stood behind his master, Elder Gu Qingyang, and stared blankly at the square. After a while, he recovered from his shock. He was stunned and said softly, "Junior brother's strength is really terrifying. This kid, how can he be so strong? This is going to be troublesome." On the high platform, Elder Kong, Hao Zongwei, Hu Sankuan, Xiao Mingze, and the other elders were shocked. When they thought of the elixirs and Dao weapons that they had bet on Elder Gu Qingyang, their faces instantly turned ugly. Su Chuyun, who was at the mysterious Martial King realm, could not withstand Du Xiaofu's punch after activating her petrification martial vein. With Du Xiaofu's strength, who could compete with him? Even Feng Xiangyu, Xu Yang, and the others could not. The only one who could compete with him was that monster. However, as long as Du Xiaofu could enter the top 2, they would have already lost. If Du Xiaofu won first place, they would lose twice as much. This kid, where did he come from? How can he be so abnormal? Elder Hu Sankuan cursed inwardly. Back in the testing area, this brat had stolen the limelight from his disciple, Feng Xiangyu, as well as a middle-grade Dao artifact. He had thought that he would be able to win the bet back this time. Who would have thought that he would be implicated and lose twice as much? Hee, good kid, good job. At this moment, only Elder Gu Qingyang was beaming with joy. He had been secretly worried for the past few days, but at this moment, he was completely at ease. What a strange martial skill. On the square, Sima Muhan's pale golden eyes had some ripples. As for Hao Guan, Mo Wen, Benyu, Xiao Yingmeng and the others, they were all dumbfounded and had yet to recover from the shock. Puchi, on the ground of the square, Su Chuyun spat out large mouthfuls of blood. He struggled several times before standing up. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, accompanied by his pale face and his blood-red eyes, revealed a ferocious expression. This is impossible, how can this be? I can't lose, how can I lose to him? With a ferocious expression, he muttered to himself. Su Chuyun's internal organs were all severely injured, especially his right arm. It hung limply and the bones were shattered. But at this moment, Su Chuyun did not seem to feel the pain in his body. He could not believe that he would be defeated by Du Xiaofu, and in such a straightforward manner. His human king talent, his petrification martial vein, in front of Du Xiaofu, could not even withstand a single blow. Rolling on the ground and begging for flowers, "Thank you all. Thank you." Chapter 655. However, Su Chuyun didn't seem to feel the pain in his body at all. He couldn't believe that he would be defeated by Du Xiaofu in such a straightforward manner. His human monarch's celestial disposition and petrification martial veins couldn't withstand a single blow from Du Xiaofu. "You've lost." Du Xiaofu looked at Su Chuyun with clear eyes. Some time ago, in the desolate ancient space, he had made a lot of progress in comprehending the mysterious move. The power of the mysterious move had also become more tyrannical. This is impossible. Impossible. I can't lose to you. Su Chuyun looked at Du Xiaofu with hatred in his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot. He didn't know what was going on, but his blood seemed to be surging. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and spat out a big mouthful of blood. Okay, the first round is over. On the high platform, Elder Hu Sankuan walked out. His voice, which contained profound energy, sounded in the ears of the surrounding spectators. Immediately, the whispers and shouts in the surroundings gradually subsided, and slowly began to return to silence. Many people looked at Elder Hu Sankuan on the high platform. Their eyes were filled with awe and respect. Elder Hu Sankuan's position in the Manchu was definitely not weak. Among all the disciples, his popularity had always been quite good. Two men, who looked like deacons, came down and helped the sluggish and dispirited Su Chuyun down. Su Chuyun's eyes were dull and filled with hatred. He didn't struggle and let the two deacons help him down. At this time, he probably knew in his heart that he had lost and didn't have the strength to fight anymore. Looking at the disciples in the square, Elder Hu Sankuan said faintly, "The first round is over. The 16 of you can enter the Manchu's secret land to cultivate. Next, the first place among you will be able to obtain a high-grade Dao tool as a reward. At the same time, this is also a chance for you to prove yourselves." After a slight pause, Elder Hu Sankuan continued, "For the first place, the rules have changed slightly. It will be a duel by drawing lots. During the duel, you are not allowed to deliberately kill or entangle. Everything will be decided by the elder panel. Those who violate the rules will be severely punished. Do you understand?" Understood. Everyone nodded, but in fact, everyone knew in their hearts that in the last 16 people, everyone's strength was almost the same. In this kind of competition, everyone would go all out, and the difference in strength between the two sides was not big, so it was inevitable that there would be problems when the time came, so everything depended on their own discretion. As soon as Elder Hu Sankuan finished speaking, a deacon of the sect brought out a black bamboo pot. There were many jade lots in it. You can start drawing lots now. There are a total of black and white jade lots. The numbers on each jade lot are from 1 to 4. There are 2 number 1 jade lots in each of the black and white jade lots. Out of the 16 jade lots, there were 4 number 1 jade lots, 4 number 2 jade lots, 4 number 3 jade lots, and 4 number 4 jade lots. When the time comes, the 4 people who drew the same number will fight against the other people who drew the same number jade lots. In the next round, the 8 winners will continue to fight against the winners of the same number jade lots. When there are only 4 winners left, the 4 people who drew the same number jade lots will fight against each other. In the end, number 1 will fight against number 4, number 2 will fight against number 3, and the 2 winners will fight against each other for the first place. Elder Hu Sankuan's voice, which contained Xian Qi, echoed in the square. Do you all understand? If there are no questions, the 16 of you can start drawing lots now. Understood. Everyone nodded without any questions. It seemed that everyone already knew the rules of the competition. Du Xiaofu also did not find it hard to understand. This kind of duel by drawing lots was once and for all. It seemed complicated, but in fact, it was extremely simple. In the beginning, out of the 16 jade lots, there would be 4 number 1 jade lots, 2 black ones, and 2 white ones. In the first round, the ones who drew the 2 white number 1 jade lots would fight against each other, and the ones who drew the 2 black number 1 jade lots would fight against each other. In the end, the winners of the 2 white number 1 jade lots and the 2 black number 1 jade lots would fight against each other in the next round. It was the same for the ones who drew the number 2, number 3, and number 4 jade lots. In the end, there were only 4 people left, which were the 4 people with different jade lots. After that, it was time to fight for the first place and the second place. After everyone nodded in understanding, the drawing of lots began under the supervision of the deacons and protectors. At this time, the surrounding onlookers were whispering to each other and began to discuss who would take the first place in the end. For the surrounding onlookers, the ones with the highest voices were Sima Muhan, Du Xiaofu, and the other three Wang Tianzi's. Among them, Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu's voices were the highest. After Du Xiaofu easily defeated Su Chuyun, it undoubtedly shocked the surrounding disciples of the ancient heaven sect. At this time, in the discussion, Du Xiaofu's voice was much louder than before, and it was even not below Sima Muhan's. After the 16 people finished drawing their lots, Du Xiaofu saw the jade lot in his hand. It was the black jade lot number 1. He glanced sideways and saw that Sima Muhan, who was not far from him, had a white jade slip with the number 2 written on it. This is bad luck. At this time, Judge Hao's voice suddenly sounded. He was holding a white number 1 jade lot in his hand. When he looked at the black No. 1 jade lot in Du Xiaofu's hand, his fat face suddenly turned ugly. Judge Hao was very clear that even if he won the first round, he would definitely meet Du Xiaofu in the next round. At that time, his fate could be imagined. It seems that there is someone who is more unlucky than me. Suddenly, Judge Hao looked at Mu Jiejia, who was beside him. When he saw the black number 1 jade lot in Mu Jiejia's hand, he immediately smiled. Sometimes, people were like this. When they felt that their luck was bad, they would suddenly see someone with worse luck than them. They would immediately feel better in their heart. Judge Hao was like this. When he saw that Mu Jiejia, who was beside him, was going to meet Du Xiaofu in the first round, he immediately felt that his luck was actually quite good. After the drawing of lots, the 16 people reported their numbers. Immediately, many people looked dejected. For the 11 outstanding talents, if they were to encounter the 3 monarch talents, they would naturally be somewhat dejected. Mu Jiejia and another Wang Tianzi, one against Du Xiaofu, and the other against Sima Muhan, were even more dejected. Alright, the drawing of lots is over. Everyone will face off against their opponents. Elder Hu Sankuan's gaze swept across the entire field. All the participants had finished drawing their lots. When he finished speaking, he saw that the 16 people had already found their opponents. He nodded slightly, and his voice, accompanied by profound energy, continued to reverberate in the field. He said, "Now, the duel begins." When he finished speaking, there was a brief moment of silence in the surroundings. In the next moment, the 16 people stood in the field, ready to fight. Their swords were drawn, and their profound energy surged. Their gazes were vigilant as they looked at their opponents. I didn't expect that Mu Jiejia would actually meet Du Xiaofu. Her luck isn't too good. Qi Minghui's luck isn't that good either. In the midst of everyone's discussion, the 16 people in the field had already begun to fiercely collide with each other. Powerful profound energy collided, accompanied by the flickering of runes, and a series of low-energy muffled sounds immediately rang out. Bang, 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 figures flickered, and practitioner weapons were waved. One by one, they directly entered the fierce battle. Most of the people's cultivation and strength were about the same. There was no need to probe, and they directly entered the fight. Perhaps they didn't have much hope for the first place, but to be able to fight with others, firstly, it was to test their strength, and secondly, they wanted to defeat their opponents. The higher their ranking, the higher their status and reputation in the Manchu. Therefore, they naturally had to give it their all. President, I know that I can't win against you, but I still want to give it a try. Mu Jiejia looked at Du Xiaofu with a helpless expression. Du Xiaofu lightly smiled and said, "Let's do it." "Alright, then I won't be polite." Mu Jiejia squeezed out a trace of a smile. Then, she formed a seal with her hands, and the energy in the air began to fluctuate, starting to condense into a talisman array. Du Xiaofu looked at Mu Jiejia with interest. He knew from his big brother, Zhen Qingchun, that a martial cultivator's spiritual vein spirit surpassed the 9th grade, and they were outstanding. For a spiritual talisman master, there were also differences in the strength of their spiritual veins, and there were also differences between outstanding people and kings. As an outstanding person, Mu Jiejia's spiritual vein spirit was outstanding. Boom! The surrounding space trembled, and around Mu Jiejia's graceful figure, the energy of heaven and earth was vigorous. Runes flashed, and in a short period of time, 22 array flags were condensed in her hand. Her complexion suddenly turned deathly pale. Walala, 22 array flags were thrown out from Mu Jiejia's hand. Instantly, 22 light pillars soared into the sky, and were about to form a huge array. Swish, 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 Du Xiaofu moved, and the hand seals in his hand changed. Then, runes soared into the sky, and like lightning, they immediately blocked the 22 light pillars. The runes seemed to have some kind of special effect. As the runes flickered, they directly disintegrated the 22 rune light pillars into broken runes, which then turned into waves of energy that dissipated in the air. Puchi, Mu Jiejia spat out a mouthful of blood, and her originally pale complexion became even paler. Chapter 656. Dissolving the rune and breaking the formation directly. I didn't expect this kid's understanding of formations to be so strong. Among the elders and protectors on the high platform, a noble and dignified woman was shocked and couldn't help but exclaim. The other elders were all experienced and knowledgeable. They were naturally able to see through Du Xiaofu's method of directly dissolving the talisman array. They were even more able to understand how profound one's attainments in talisman arrays were to be able to accomplish this. That kid is really abnormal. His martial arts are so terrifying, but I didn't expect his understanding of formations to be so strong. Elder Chang Mingze was also very shocked. Hee. Elder Gu Qingyang was smiling. After so many years, this was the first time a disciple had made him proud. You have already used up a lot of your spiritual power. Although your spiritual power is enough to activate a 6-star mysterious formation, your understanding of formations is still lacking. If you forcefully set up a 6-star mysterious formation, even if you succeed, it will be very harmful to you. Next time, you must be careful not to set up a formation that you can't control. Otherwise, if you meet someone who is stronger than you in terms of formations, you will be heavily injured. Du Xiaofu looked at Mu Jiejia in front of him and handed her a medicinal pill. He said, "You didn't understand enough of the runes you laid down just now. When the time comes, you need to study them properly. If I didn't dissolve your runes just now, the price you would have to pay would be even greater than now." "Thank you, President. I understand." A smile appeared on Mu Jiejia's pale face as she nodded her head. She took the pill from Du Xiaofu's hand and unceremoniously stuffed it into her mouth. Ripples appeared in her bright eyes. After Du Xiaofu nodded, he looked around and met someone's gaze. The owner of the gaze had a pair of light purple eyes. It was Sima Muhan. At this moment, she had also defeated an outstanding opponent. Looking at Du Xiaofu with her purple eyes, Sima Muhan raised her eyebrows slightly. She glanced at Du Xiaofu and pouted slightly, as if provoking him. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. He didn't know how he had offended this little girl. Looking around, Du Xiaofu discovered that several people had already finished fighting. Xu Yang, Feng Xiangyu, and Shi Yunsheng were all the victors. Mo Wen and Judge Hao also finished their battle. Each of them had won by a hair's breadth. They had activated their practitioner weapons and meridian spirits, but they had only won by a hair's breadth. Their faces were pale, and they had paid a heavy price. On the other hand, Running Bull had been defeated by Xu Yang. In the end, only Qiao Yingmeng and another genius were left to fight. The two were locked in a stalemate as Xian Qi surged in all directions. "Big brother, that man is called Dai Yang, he is also an outstanding talent. Who do you think will win between him and Xiao Yingmeng?" Judge Hao came to Du Xiaofu's side and asked Du Xiaofu as he watched the battle between Xiao Yingmeng and that extraordinary youth. Their cultivation and strength are similar, and their practitioner weapons are also similar. If we want to determine the winner, I'm afraid we'll have to see the final trump card. Du Xiaofu said to Judge Hao, who was beside him after watching the final battle between the two. The battle between the two had reached its climax. Qiaoying Meng's attacks were quick and agile, like a cheetah. Dai Tsang Yang's attacks were extremely steady. His vigorous Xian Qi was endless, and his defense was watertight. As time passed, Qiaoying Meng's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. One attack after another came in a spurt of energy. Her graceful figure drew an arc in the air as she continuously attacked Dai Tsang Yang. Dai Tsang Yang was still extremely steady under Qiaoying Meng's continuous attacks. His vigorous Xian Qi defense didn't have the slightest bit of disorder or change in color. His expression was rather calm as he continuously defended against Qiaoying Meng's fierce attacks. It seemed like he could only defend against Qiaoying Meng's attacks, but he wasn't completely suppressed. Many disciples and the surrounding spectators were shouting the names of Qiaoying Meng and Dai Tsang Yang. It seemed like the two had a lot of supporters in the Manchu. Qiaoying Meng seems to be about to lose. Her attacks are too hasty and she's panicking. Once there's an opportunity, I'm afraid it'll be Dai Tsang Yang's strongest counterattack. Judge Hao seemed to have seen the situation and couldn't help but worry for Qiaoying Meng. Not necessarily. It's hard to say who will win. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. Golden Light Qiaoying Meng's attacks were too hasty, but he was still biased towards Qiaoying Meng. Boom! Not long after Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the fierce battle between the two suddenly changed. Dai Tsang Yang, who had been passively receiving Qiaoying Meng's fierce attacks, suddenly burst out with an extremely fierce attack when Qiaoying Meng made a mistake. His Xian Qi surged in his hand as runes erupted. A fierce palm print condensed and shot out like a thunderbolt, slapping towards Qiaoying Meng as fast as lightning. Swish! An extremely powerful palm print swept out and instantly landed on Qiaoying Meng's shoulder. At this time, Qiaoying Meng's graceful figure was directly shattered by the powerful palm print, but no blood flowed out. Not good, it's an afterimage. Dai Tsang Yang's complexion abruptly changed. As if he had a premonition, his figure immediately retreated. Don't move. Otherwise, even if you don't die, you will be heavily injured. Almost at the same time, a delicate shout entered Dai Tsang Yang's ears. Then a curved blade practitioner weapon in the shape of a taiji diagram wrapped in dazzling and sharp practitioner inscriptions was placed against Dai Tsang Yang's neck from behind. Qiaoying Meng's figure also appeared behind Dai Tsang Yang. Dai Tsang Yang's complexion was slightly sluggish. Then, he bitterly smiled and said, "This blade can't take my life now, but if it was a life and death battle, you didn't need to remind me. Even if I didn't die, I would be heavily injured. I lost. What a good move to show weakness. My defeat is not unjust. You let me win." Qiaoying Meng put away her curved blade practitioner weapon and retreated. Her sharp eyes revealed a smile. "Big brother, how did you know Qiaoying Meng would win?" Seeing the result of the battle, Judge Hao was extremely shocked. He asked Du Xiaofu in astonishment. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled and said to Judge Hao, "Don't tell me you didn't see it." Although Qiaoying Meng didn't show her strength, in terms of speed, her performance in the giant rock space was much faster than now. She had been deliberately slowing down and showing flaws. She was only luring the enemy in and waiting for the final fatal blow. In the end, she succeeded. You can even see that. You're really amazing. Judge Hao rolled his eyes at Du Xiaofu, but then his complexion turned ugly. He suddenly remembered that in the next round, he would have to face Du Xiaofu. The outcome could be imagined. The first round of the 16-people competition had completely ended. In the end, Du Xiaofu, Sima Muhan, Xu Yang, Feng Xiangyu, Shi Yunsheng, Mo Wen, Judge Hao and Qiaoying Meng won. They're not weak at all. Compared to the previous batch, they're much stronger. On the high platform, an elder exclaimed in admiration. This year's inner sect disciples were, on average, much stronger than last year's inner sect disciples. The second round of the 8-people competition began again. In this round, Sima Muhan faced Shi Yunsheng, Xu Yang faced Mo Wen, Feng Xiangyu faced Xiaoying Meng, and as for Judge Hao, he naturally faced Du Xiaofu. Boom! Without the slightest warm-up, Xu Yang, Mo Wen, Feng Xiangyu, and Xiaoying Meng had already entered a fiery duel. Soon after, Shi Yunsheng also took the initiative to attack Sima Muhan. You're not going to fight? Du Xiaofu looked at the 6 people not far away who had already started fighting. The fiery battle immediately ignited the entire arena. He couldn't help but ask Judge Hao with a smile. I can't beat you at all. Judge Hao said helplessly. Didn't you say that you have to fight even if you can't beat me? Du Xiaofu said with a smile. Since you know you can't beat me, then you're just looking for a beating. Judge Hao was very helpless. If the difference in strength was just a little bit, then so be it. But the difference was too big. They weren't even on the same level. There was no way he could fight. He was just looking for a beating. Then what do you want now? Du Xiaofu was also very helpless at this moment. I surrender. I'll let you save your strength to deal with others. Judge Hao was very clear in his heart. Since he couldn't beat him, it wasn't like he would lose to others. Up to you. Du Xiaofu smiled and stood with his hands behind his back. He began to watch the fiery battle not far away from him. Chapter 657. Boom! Feng Xiangyu's fist was like a meteor and he punched out heavily. Feng Xiangyu punched Du Xiaofu with the force of a thunderbolt. The terrifying aura on his fist seemed to want to shatter the space. Unfettered steps. Just as the thunderous fist appeared in front of him, Du Xiaofu's purple robe fluttered in the wind. His figure drifted like a deity, changing unpredictably and instantly disappearing in front of the surging fist. The terrifying fist caused the space around him to ripple as if it was going to create a huge hole in the space around him. The vast amount of energy and force caused everyone's heart to palpitate. The runes were dazzling as they shot towards the sky. At the same time, as Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared, Feng Xiangyu suddenly looked up. His eyes were filled with fluctuations as if he had felt a terrifying aura. Walala, above Feng Xiangyu's figure, a dazzling golden light suddenly exploded. The golden light was like the sun as it shone brightly. At this moment, the dazzling light wreaked havoc in the sky. A domineering aura descended, causing the expressions of the elders on the high platform to change drastically. Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the golden light. A pair of golden rune wings spread out from his back. A domineering aura erupted in the sky like a volcano, causing the sky to tremble and the clouds to churn. Rock descends to the 9 heavens. A shout that was low and deep like muffled thunder sounded out from Du Xiaofu's mouth, and then the talisman markings on his back flapped. The dazzling golden talisman markings were like a rain of light as they poured down from the sky and spread out like a rock soaring through the 9 heavens and traversing the 4 seas. Boom! The rock spread its wings and carried the domineering will of the golden rock. With an unparalleled aura, Feng Xiangyu was suppressed. Roar! Feng Xiangyu's red eyes shone brightly as he roared like a beast. His body was covered with runes and a terrifying aura erupted from his body. He wanted to break free from Du Xiaofu's suppression. However, under the suppression of the true golden-winged Great Peng, golden light filled the sky, and pressure filled the sky. No matter how hard Feng Xiangyu struggled, he was unable to break free from the suppression of the golden talisman. What a terrifying aura! The aura of the golden rock. Is this brat a human or a beast? On the high platform, the gazes of several elders suddenly trembled. At this moment, the domineering aura that erupted from Du Xiaofu's body was clearly the aura of a true golden-winged rock. A human who had comprehended the beast ability of the golden rock would definitely not be able to have such a powerful aura. It was as if the real golden rock's world. However, this brat was a human. What a terrifying aura. My meridian spirit. Is Du Xiaofu's aura the real golden rock? How can it be so terrifying? Among the dense crowd of onlookers, those with lower cultivation bases were all trembling, and their eyes were filled with shock. The meridian spirits in the spectators' bodies were uncontrollably affected. However, all the meridian spirits of the demonic beasts were suppressed by the aura. Do you feel it? Du Xiaofu's aura is only at the complete martial lord realm. It's too powerful. A complete martial king realm cultivator is able to contend with a martial king realm cultivator. Is this brat hiding his cultivation, or is he really that powerful? Some elders exclaimed. Du Xiaofu's cultivation was at the complete martial lord realm, but he was able to contend with a martial king realm cultivator like Feng Xiangyu. It was too shocking. Unable to contend against Du Xiaofu's great suppression, Feng Xiangyu roared like a wild beast. Mysterious symbols spread all over his body. After which, under the astonished gazes of the surrounding crowd, the mysterious symbols formed and arranged themselves in the air in front of him, causing his body to swell a little. He was like a wild beast overlooking the land from the sky, giving off a peerless pressure. Break! Feng Xiangyu's roar shook the heavens and the surroundings. The mysterious runes on his body were dazzling. At this moment, his ferocious face was extremely shocking. Suppress. Golden light bloomed in the sky. Du Xiaofu fully activated rock descends to the 9 heavens. It was as if the real golden rock had descended, carrying the domineering will of the golden rock. It was as if the real golden rock had spread its wings. It was powerful and domineering. The domineering aura filled the sky and suppressed everything. Rumble. Such a collision sounded like thunder in the sky above the square. A series of dazzling runes burst out. Amidst the earth-shattering sound, the space seemed to be about to shatter. At the place where Feng Xiangyu was suppressed, one could clearly see the spatial energy rippling out like waves. The energy spread out in all directions. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was giving it his all as well. Using the comprehension of the golden-winged rock that he had gained in the barren ancient space, he suppressed Feng Xiangyu. No matter how Feng Xiangyu struggled, he was completely suppressed. On the high platform, all the elders and protectors were shocked. A complete martial lord realm cultivator was actually able to fight so fiercely with a mysterious martial king realm cultivator. How terrifying was that? Feng Xiangyu even had the upper hand. TSK. In the vast golden light, Feng Xiangyu was gradually suppressed. Du Xiaofu's figure then floated in front of Feng Xiangyu in a domineering manner. The light golden runes surged and Du Xiaofu's body was enveloped in a golden halo. As the runes surged, it was as if a golden rock was about to rush out from the halo. The berserk martial vein is indeed very strong. However, you still lost. Du Xiaofu's words were calm yet domineering. He waved his hand and golden talisman runes flew out. They were densely packed and stacked on top of each other. It was as if a golden-winged rock had spread its wings and directly engulfed Feng Xiangyu. Walala, an extremely domineering aura erupted and the energy impacted the surrounding space. The space trembled and Feng Xiangyu's body was immediately sent flying. He only stabilized his body after flying for a few dozen feet. Pfft! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Feng Xiangyu's mouth. The runes on his body suddenly cracked and shattered. His face turned as pale as ash. His swollen body returned to its original state and his aura began to weaken. Du Xiaofu won and entered the top 2. Many of the elders and protectors on the high platform were shocked, but they also felt a little helpless. Feng Xiangyu had already lost. It was obvious that he was no match for Du Xiaofu. Half a month ago, many elders and protectors had placed bets on Dao weapons and royal-grade elixirs. They had already lost. Where did this brat come from? He's too abnormal. Elder Hao Zongwei sighed helplessly. Back then, he had instigated everyone to place their bets. Who knew that Du Xiaofu was actually so abnormal? Sigh, Elder Qian Mingze, Elder Hu Sankuan, and the others looked at each other and sighed. To them, they already knew of Du Xiaofu's strength. However, when they heard that Si Ruofeng and the other fellows on the bronze list would find trouble with Du Xiaofu in the giant rock space, they couldn't help but place their bets. Who knew that Yin Machin couldn't do anything to Du Xiaofu in the giant rock space? At this point, it was too late for them to regret. Little junior brother, well done. Yu Wanli wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and a smile appeared on his face. After defeating Feng Xiangyu, not only would his master not go bankrupt, but he would also be able to earn a huge sum of money. Hee, quick, hand over your bets. None of you can escape. Don't think of reneging on your bets. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Elder Gu Qingyang's old face was like a blooming sunflower as he began to collect his bets. This time, he had won a lot of bets. It was definitely a big win. Here. Some elders looked pained. However, they knew that they couldn't renege on their bets except for Elder Gu Qingyang. In the end, they had no choice but to hand over their bets to Elder Gu Qingyang. Elder Hu Sankuan, Elder Qiao Mingze, Elder Hao Zongwei and the others could only helplessly take out their Dao artifacts and king-grade medicinal pills. Their faces were also filled with pain. Hu Sankuan, your disciple is really disappointing. Elder Hao Zongwei couldn't help but roll his eyes at Elder Hu Sankuan. Elder Hu Sankuan also rolled his eyes at Elder Hao Zongwei and snorted, if your disciple isn't disappointing, then let your disciple try. I never thought that the president would be so powerful. At the edge of the square, Xiao Yingmeng, Judge Hao, Mu Jiejia, Mo Wen, and the others stood together. At this moment, their eyes were filled with shock. You won't be proud for long. So what if you're strong among the new inner sect disciples? In the crowd, Zhou Yinger's eyes were cold when she saw that Du Xiaofu had defeated Feng Xiangyu. You won, I lost. I'm indeed inferior to you. On the square, Feng Xiangyu stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his black sleeves. He looked at Du Xiaofu and there was a hint of loneliness in his pure black eyes. Feng Xiangyu knew that he had lost. He was a martial king, but he couldn't defeat his opponent, who was a martial marquis. The berserk martial vein is indeed powerful. It's just that I have some special means. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to suppress you. Du Xiaofu said to Feng Xiangyu. The berserk martial vein was indeed powerful. Du Xiaofu knew that the terrifying power from before was enough to boil the blood in his body and cause his blood vessels to explode. He couldn't resist it at all. If it wasn't for his strong physical defense, he wouldn't have been able to resist Feng Xiangyu's berserk martial vein. The berserk martial vein was also extremely domineering, but the golden-winged great rock cultivation technique that he cultivated was even more domineering. If it wasn't for the fact that the two of them countered each other, Du Xiaofu guessed that he would have to go all out to suppress Feng Xiangyu. Chapter 658. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Feng Xiangyu looked at Du Xiaofu and squeezed out a smile on his pale face. He said, a loss is a loss. There's no need for so many reasons. However, this can be considered as resolving a knot in my heart. There's nothing I can't let go of in the future. If there's a chance in the future, I will definitely win it back. Du Xiaofu smiled and didn't speak any further. He glanced slightly to the side towards the nearby battlefield, and he just happened to see a strand of dazzling talisman markings blossoming like fireworks, and beneath the gorgeous and resplendent glow was an energy of destruction. Puchi, Shu Yang's body fell from the sky. After he landed, the dazzling talisman on his body shattered and a powerful aura dissipated. Shu Yang's long robe fluttered in the wind. After he stabilized his body, he stumbled a few steps back before he could stabilize his body. Your human king martial pulse doesn't seem to be enough. Do you still want to use the pulse spirit? Otherwise, you won't be my opponent. Sima Muhan landed on the ground. Her dress fluttered in the wind and the accessories on her wrist jingled. She pouted her red lips and looked extremely cute. However, in Xu Yang's eyes, the girl in front of him wasn't cute at all. She was just a demon. She was publicly recognized as a demon in the ancient heaven sect. He could feel how terrifying and powerful this demon was. I'm also not a match for the pulse spirit. I've lost. Xu Yang shook his head and said helplessly. He clearly knew what the demon's pulse spirit was. If he activated his pulse spirit, he would only be asking for a beating. Moreover, the demon's strength was not as simple as his pulse spirit. This little niece has never used her full strength. I can't see through her. Du Xiaofu looked at Sima Muhan. There was a hint of doubt in his eyes. This girl's strength was definitely not simple. Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan win. Feng Xiangyu and Xu Yang lose. On the high platform, Elder Hu Sankuan's voice reverberated in the air. There was a hint of pain in his voice. Supporting Uncle Master Du, I support young Mississippi. Around the Tianwu Square, shouts and cheers soared into the sky. In this world where the strong were respected no matter where they were. At this moment, Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu's victory immediately caused the crowd to erupt into cheers. Profound energy surged beneath Xu Yang and Feng Xiangyu's feet, and they tapped the tips of their feet lightly before their figures instantly retreated from the square. Humph. Sima Muhan looked at the Du Xiaofu from not too far away, and let out a soft snort from her throat. Her light purple eyes raised, and her small mouth pouted, adding a bit of coquettishness and cuteness. I'm afraid this girl will be difficult to deal with. Du Xiaofu's eyes moved. He felt that Sima Muhan was definitely not easy to deal with. In the last round, to fight for first place, Du Xiaofu versus Sima Muhan. Elder Hu Sankuan looked at the crowd of spectators around the square, and his voice reverberated in the air. He said, however, there has been a sudden change in the rules of this round, and it will be postponed to tomorrow morning. What? It has to be postponed until tomorrow? Why is there a sudden change in the rules? In the past, isn't it only one day? As soon as Elder Hu Sankuan's voice fell, whispers could be heard from the crowd. Many disciples were puzzled. In the past, the first place would be decided in one day, but this year, it would be split into 2 days. In the square, Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu were also puzzled. Tomorrow, to fight for first place, the sect leader will be here personally. The two of you should prepare well today. Now, everyone can leave. Elder Hu Sankuan continued. As soon as Elder Hu Sankuan's voice fell, the entire square was in an uproar, and waves of voices could be heard. I didn't expect the sect master to come personally tomorrow. From the looks of it, sect master is extremely concerned about eldest miss and martial uncle Du, that's why he personally came. In the past, sect master has never personally come to such a duel. I wonder who will win tomorrow, eldest miss or martial uncle Du. Young mistress's talent is monstrous. Uncle Master Du is very strong, but I think he's still lacking compared to young mistress. That's not necessarily true. Martial Uncle Du is definitely not a weakling. We'll know who wins and who loses, and who takes first place tomorrow. Whispers and discussions resounded throughout the square. Some were doubtful, while others were expectant. At dusk, the setting sun shrouded the sky with red clouds. On Tianmu Peak, in the courtyard, Elder Gu Qingyang's face was full of smiles as he looked at Du Xiaofu. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. He stuffed a large number of pills into Du Xiaofu's hands and said, "Tomorrow, you will fight with that girl Muhan. These are all pills to replenish your Xian Qi. They will be of great help to your recovery. Quickly take these pills and adjust your breathing. Master, junior brother is only at the martial marquis realm. These are all king-grade pills. I'm afraid junior brother will be in trouble after taking them. Yu Wanli saw that his master's large number of pills were all king grade. They were filled with light and contained astonishing energy. He immediately reminded his master kindly. If a martial marquis realm cultivator were to take king grade pills, it would indeed be very troublesome. Your junior brother will have no problem taking king grade pills. Unlike you, who was so disappointing and didn't give your master any face. Elder Gu Qingyang turned his head and glared at Yu Wanli. Back then, this third disciple of his had made him lose a lot of Dao tools and pills. Fortunately, he had gotten his revenge this time. As for king grade pills, Elder Gu Qingyang already knew that Du Xiaofu had taken them before. There wouldn't be much of a problem. To be able to defeat a martial king realm cultivator at the martial marquis realm and even kill a martial king realm nirvana realm cultivator at the fertile field city, how could an ordinary martial king realm cultivator be compared to him? Seeing his master's glare, Yu Wanli didn't dare to say anything more. He secretly stuffed a marquis grade pill into Du Xiaofu's hands and said in a low voice, "Junior brother, don't listen to your master too much. Take the pills yourself." "Thank you, third senior brother." Du Xiaofu didn't reject his third senior brother Yu Wanli's pills. Looking at Elder Gu Qingyang and his third senior brother in front of him, warmth flowed in his heart. At least you know what's good for you. Treat your junior brother better. Elder Gu Qingyang also saw all of this and looked at Yu Wanli with satisfaction. Then, he asked Du Xiaofu, "Xiaofu, how's your cultivation of the Bright Saint Sword manual?" "Master, I have some insights." Du Xiaofu replied. "That's good. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me at any time. The Bright Saint Sword manual is also a secret in our entire Ancient Heaven sect. It's extremely powerful." Elder Gu Qingyang looked at the Du Xiaofu and said, "Tomorrow, when you and that girl Muhan fight, you must pay attention to that girl Muhan's 3 absolutes." "Which 3 absolutes?" Hearing this, Du Xiaofu asked curiously. Yu Wanli's face revealed a wry smile, and his eyes were also filled with shock. He said to Du Xiaofu, "Junior brother, martial nephew Muhan is extraordinary. Her heavenly talent is known as a monster. Her 3 absolutes are sword techniques, pulse soul, and martial vein. You must be careful when you fight with her tomorrow. Sword technique, pulse soul, martial vein." Du Xiaofu's gaze slightly fluctuated. Tomorrow, Sima Muhan would indeed be a strong opponent, but if he couldn't win, then there would be trouble. That girl Muhan is a bit abnormal. Just do your best tomorrow. Elder Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu, "Even if you lose tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Master is still here. Disciple will do his best." Du Xiaofu had a wry smile on his face. It seemed like his master didn't have much confidence in him. "All right, go back and prepare well. Tomorrow, your senior brother, the sect master, will personally watch the battle. You must perform well." Elder Gu Qingyang suddenly said to Du Xiaofu with a serious expression, "You must remember, sometimes you must know how to restrain yourself, but sometimes you must go all out. The more extraordinary you are, the more cultivation resources you will be able to obtain in the Ancient Sky sect, and the more benefits it will bring to you in the future. Even in my Ancient Sky sect, the best resources are limited, and can only be given to the most extraordinary disciples. Do you understand?" Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Gu Qingyang, nodded, and said, "Disciple understands. I will definitely do my best tomorrow." "All right, with your words, Master is relieved. Even if you lose tomorrow, it doesn't matter. You have already given Master face, but Master still hopes that you can win. It's not because you can win face for me, but because you can soar into the sky and look down on your peers," Elder Gu Qingyang said. His tone was sonorous and powerful, and his eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Du Xiaofu nodded vigorously and didn't say anything else. His master, Elder Gu Qingyang, was very clear in his heart. No matter where it was, only the most talented people would be able to obtain the best resources. Even in Tianwu Academy, it was the same. The strong were respected, and the weak were eliminated. This was an unchanging principle. After leaving Tianmu Peak, Du Xiaofu returned to his own peak to prepare for tomorrow's battle. Just as he returned to his peak, Du Xiaofu saw an unexpected figure. He was elegant and handsome enough to make any girl's heart flutter. It was the current number 1 on the bronze ranking, Yin Machen. Seeing Yin Machen, before Du Xiaofu could say anything, he saw Yin Machen take out a wine jar. With a wave of his hand, the fragrance of the wine dispersed with the wind. Fragrant wine. Good wine. Although Du Xiaofu didn't know much about wine, under the influence of his drunkard father, he had a special sense of smell for wine. He could immediately sense that the wine jar was definitely good wine. Of course, if it was taken out by Yin Machen, no matter how bad the wine was, it couldn't be bad. Chapter 659. After a while, the sun set in the west and the mountains stretched out. On one of the mountain peaks, smoke rose in spirals, accompanied by the tempting aroma of meat. On the grill made of rocks, a medium-sized, low-grade demon beast was being grilled on the grill. The aroma of meat filled the air, along with the sizzling sound of oil and the aroma of the meat. The entire mountain was filled with the aroma of the meat. Du Xiaofu rolled up his long sleeves, looking like a chef. He sprinkled a lot of spices on the barbecued meat, and the fragrance wafted out. Yin Machen, who was beside him, was dumbfounded. The low-rank demonic beast was caught by Du Xiaofu from this mountain range. Within the territory of the ancient heaven sect, low-rank demonic beasts could be found everywhere, and there were even many demonic beast kings. However, they seemed to be the demonic beast mounts of the ancient heaven sect's disciples, so Du Xiaofu didn't have any ideas about them. I didn't expect you to have this skill. It looks pretty good. Yin Machen stared at the barbecued meat in front of Du Xiaofu, and couldn't help but look at Du Xiaofu in a different light. This skill is something I have learned since I was young. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. Back then in the Stone City's Du family, Fu Yibai had brought him along to do such things many times. At this moment, he did not know where that old fellow had run off to. Perhaps, he would not have the chance to see that old fellow again in his life. This made Du Xiaofu feel a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would not have let Fu Yibai run around. I was wondering why you would carry spices with you. Yin Machen was puzzled. When he saw Du Xiaofu taking out spices from his qiankuan bag, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. However, no cultivator would keep spices in their qiankuan bag. After all, they weren't chefs. This is my personal preference. When I'm hungry, I can make a meal at any time. Du Xiaogang smiled. Yin Machen stood in front of Du Xiaofu. There was no doubt that he was a handsome man, and not just any ordinary handsome man. As the first on the bronze list, he could even rank in the top 10 on the gold list. He had an extremely high status in the Manchu and was deeply loved by countless female disciples. However, at this moment, as he stood in front of the barbecued meat and smelled the aroma of the meat, he couldn't help but drool for some unknown reason. In the entire ancient heaven sect, aside from Du Xiaofu, no one else would be able to see such a scene. When Du Xiaofu roasted the meat until it was at its most fragrant, the two of them shared it. Good meat. Good wine. On the mountain peak, the two of them ate heartily, wolfing down the food. They didn't look like dignified inner sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect at all. After eating his fill, Yin Machen burped and patted his stomach. A satisfied smile appeared on his handsome face as he said, I don't know how long it has been since I last ate. This is also the first time I've eaten something so delicious. There will be more opportunities in the future. Du Xiaofu patted his sleeves and stood up with a smile on his face. It had been a long time since he ate so heartily. Yin Machen smiled and looked at Du Xiaofu, saying, I said I would treat you to a drink, and I didn't go back on my words. Good wine. Du Xiaofu smiled. This wine was indeed very good. It was much better than the wine his drunkard father drank at the Stone City's Du family. However, although it was good wine, it couldn't taste the same as before. The wine was good, but the taste was wrong. How are your preparations for tomorrow's battle with junior sister Muhan? Yin Machin looked at Du Xiaofu. A gentle breeze blew on the mountain peak, causing his clothes to flutter. He was still elegant and spotless as he said, "Be careful of junior sister Muhan's 3 absolutes. Sword technique, martial spirit, and martial vein." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. He had already heard about it from his master and third senior brother. It seems like you already know that junior sister Muhan is not easy to deal with. Even if I were to face her now, I'm afraid I wouldn't have any chance of winning. Work hard tomorrow. After Yin Machin finished speaking, he looked at Du Xiaofu with a smile and then left. His elegant figure then disappeared into the distance. Du Xiaofu stayed quietly on the mountain peak for a while before leaving as well. Night slowly fell and twilight enveloped the earth. A full moon quietly climbed into the sky. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. "Father, why did you postpone the duel today? Wouldn't it be over if you let me defeat that guy directly?" In the quiet courtyard, Sima Muhan looked at Sima Ta-Xing. There was some doubt in her light purple eyes. Her small mouth was slightly pouted. Obviously, she was somewhat dissatisfied. "It's not that I want to postpone it. It's that an elder in your Manchu found something interesting about that kid, so he wants to take a good look tomorrow. I just happen to have nothing to do, so I'll go and watch the fun." Sima Ta-Xing smiled at his beloved daughter. "That guy isn't weak, but tomorrow won't change the result. I'll still defeat that annoying guy." Sima Muhan pouted and said, "Listening to your politeness, it seems like that kid offended you?" Sima Ta-Xing asked doubtfully. Sima Muhan frowned. She thought about it carefully for a while. That guy didn't seem to have offended her, but she didn't know why, but she felt that he had offended her. Seeing this, Sima Ta-Xing smiled and said, "Girl, you should prepare for tomorrow's duel. Your elders in the Manchus said that that kid is not simple. It won't be easy for you to defeat him. I will definitely defeat that guy tomorrow." Sima Muhan pouted, turned around, and left. The ornaments on her wrist made a crisp tinkling sound. Sima Ta-Xing looked at his beloved daughter's back and smiled. Then, he slightly raised his head and murmured, "Where did that kid come from? He really surprises me again and again." The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The mountains and earth were shrouded in the twilight. The ancient heaven sect was still quite lively. Tomorrow morning, Du Xiaofu and Miss Sima Muhan would postpone their duel. The entire sect was looking forward to it. Especially today, Miss Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu's performance on the Heaven Martial Square. They both easily defeated Mortal Monarch Heavenly Aptitude experts. One of them was a Mortal Monarch Heavenly Aptitude expert, while the other was the disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang. Their statuses were quite special. This made the entire Manchu look forward to their duel even more. I wonder if Miss or Martial Uncle Du will win tomorrow. Their strength is unfathomable. Anyway, I bet 20 million magnetite on Mississippi. I hope she wins. Only 20 million magnetite. I bet 30 million magnetite on Martial Uncle Du, and I even bet 3 marquis rank pills. At night, Du Xiaofu returned to his courtyard and entered the ancient desolate space. Under Zhen Qingquan's guidance, he continued to comprehend the soul-trapping formation. If someone knew that Du Xiaofu was still in the mood to comprehend the soul-trapping formation when he was about to face off against Sima Muhan tomorrow, who knew what they would think? And all of this was because Zhen Qingquan had promised Du Xiaofu that as long as he comprehended the soul-trapping formation to Zhen Qingquan's satisfaction, he would consider imparting another method to Du Xiaofu. It was said that the method had a lot to do with the soul-trapping formation. One had to comprehend the soul-trapping formation to a certain extent before they could comprehend and cultivate the method. Du Xiaofu was looking forward to it. The things on his big brother, Zhen Qingchun, were no ordinary things. This kid is simply a monster. How can he let others live? Zhen Qingchun watched Du Xiaofu's comprehension from the side. His expression changed continuously. In the end, he simply couldn't be bothered to watch, so as to avoid angering himself. One night was equivalent to 5 days in the ancient desolate space. Under Zhen Qingchun's reminder, Du Xiaofu, who was immersed in his comprehension, had no choice but to leave the ancient desolate space. There was still a duel waiting outside. Early in the morning, when the darkness before dawn had just passed, the entire Tianwu Square was already crowded with people, waiting for today's highly anticipated duel and contest. Did you see that? Yin Machen, Si Ruofeng, Ji Aoming, and the other experts on the bronze list are all here to watch the duel. Not only the experts on the bronze list, but I also saw the horrifying overlords on the silver list. Of course. Even the sect master is here to watch the duel between the young lady and Junior Du. I wonder who will win today. There was a lot of chatter, noise, and whispers all gathered together. The sound waves resounded throughout the Tianwu Square, and could be heard clearly from afar. My apologies, everyone. I was on the bus this morning and did not have the time to send out the notice. I thought I would be able to arrive early. This is a chapter that I just rushed out and did not have the time to correct the typos. Brothers, take a look first. I will edit it later. Let's rush out the next chapter first. Once again, I apologize to all the brothers for not sending out the notice in advance today. This is Xiao Yu's fault. Chapter 660. Whoosh whoosh, all of a sudden, the sound of wind breaking could be heard in midair. Many streaks of light streaked across the sky. The boisterous square gradually quieted down. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the sky. Look, the elders are here. Miss Muhan is here too. Sect Master, the Sect Master is really here. That's the Sect Master of my ancient heaven sect, a top expert whose name shakes the central continent. Silhouettes landed on the high platform one after another. Faintly discernible qi descended and spread out in the air, causing people's hearts to tremble. Looking at the silhouettes arriving one after another, the gazes of the hundreds of thousands of people on the Tianwu Square became filled with reverence and they immediately bowed. Greetings, Sect Master. Greetings, Protectors. In the square, all the disciples of the Ancient Heaven Sect saluted respectfully. The Sect Master of the Ancient Heaven Sect was a top expert in the Central Continent. He was someone who could make the Central Continent tremble with just a stomp of his foot. He was a godlike existence in the hearts of all the disciples of the Ancient Heaven Sect. All the disciples of the Ancient Heaven Sect had heard of the legend of the Sect Master when he was young, and they were even more respectful towards him. On the high platform, behind Hu Sangkuan, Hao Zhongwei, Kong Zhonglei, Xiao Mingze, and the other elders and protectors, there was a middle-aged man who was nearly 7 feet tall. There was a faint luster flowing on his skin, and his eyes flashed with a deep light. The burly man was thin, but he looked slender and sturdy. He wore a green robe embroidered with green patterns, and his long black hair was neatly combed into a bun. A few strands of hair hung down from his ears. He looked elegant and heroic. He was the Ancient Heaven Sect's Sect Master, Sima Taxing. No need for formalities. When you watch the duel later, you should properly comprehend it, Sima Taxing said. He stood with his hands behind his back. His slender voice seemed even more tall and straight, and there was a hint of elegance in his imposing manner. Yes. Waves of sound rose and fell as figures stood up. Father, I'll go down first. On the high platform, a delicate voice sounded beside Sima Taxing, and then a beautiful figure slowly landed on the square. She was wearing a pair of patterned velvet shoes, wearing a moon-white and pink brocade dress. A light pink gauze cloak was draped over her shoulders, and a pink belt was tied around her waist, which accentuated her well-proportioned figure. Her slender waist was too small to be grasped, and there were two shining white bracelets on her wrists. When she raised her hands, they made a pleasant sound, which made her even more lovely. I support young Mississippi, support senior sister Muhan. As Sima Muhan left the stage, a lot of cheers rang out from the crowd. This was especially true for the young male disciples. Sima Muhan was definitely the target of all the male disciples in the Ancient Heaven sect. Everyone knew that if one could gain the favor of the young Miss Sima Muhan, it would not only save them 30 years of hard work, it would be like reaching the heavens in a single step, and they would be able to stand proudly in the entire central region. Sect Master, please take a seat first. That kid Du Xiaofu hasn't arrived yet. Hu Sankuan said to Sima Taxing and signaled for Sima Taxing to sit first. In his heart, he hoped that Du Xiaofu wouldn't come. If Du Xiaofu won against Sima Muhan today, the Dao tool he lost yesterday would be doubled today. Martial uncle, please take a seat first. Sima Taxing heard this and said to Elder Gu Qingyang beside him. Elder Gu Qingyang was particularly spirited today. With an ancient sword on his back, his white hair fluttered in the wind, and a few strands of white hair fluttered along with his white beard. He looked extremely sage-like, as if an immortal had descended to the world. Hearing this, he immediately said to Sima Taxing, "You're welcome, martial nephew. You're the sect master of the Ancient Heaven sect. Please take a seat first." "Martial uncle, let's sit together." Sima Taxing nodded. In his deep, glass-like eyes, he was also extremely respectful to Elder Gu Qingyang. "Well, let's sit together." Elder Gu Qingyang slightly stroked his long beard. His face was full of smiles, which made the other elders feel helpless. On the high platform, everyone sat upright. Elder Gu Qingyang sat quietly beside Sima Taxing. On his extremely ruddy face, his eyes were unusually clear. After glancing at the many elders around him, he closed his eyes and meditated like an immortal, which made people feel awe and respect him. However, when he landed beside the many elders around him, he felt like he was attracting hatred. It should be known that although not all the elders of the Ancient Heaven sect were present, at least 90% of the elders were present yesterday. Yesterday, they all felt some heartache when they lost. Elder Hu Sankuan's gaze looked into the distance. After which, he looked at the sage-like Elder Gu Qingyang and said, "Elder Qingyang, is your disciple, Du Xiaofu, coming or not? If he doesn't dare to come, then just admit defeat. Otherwise, the sect master will have to wait." Hearing this, the sage-like Elder Qingyang immediately opened his slightly closed eyes. His gaze was clear as he glanced at Elder Hu Sankuan and said, "What's the hurry? Don't worry, you've lost twice. You're destined to not be able to escape. Let's talk about it after that guy wins." Elder Hu Sankuan helplessly glared at Elder Gu Qingyang. Sima Taxing looked at the sky in front of him without leaving a trace. After which, he lowered his head and smiled at Elder Hu Sankuan. He said, "That little guy is already here." Swoosh, in the distant sky, the sound of rushing wind began to resound. Under the gazes of everyone present, a figure swept through the air and arrived above the square in a few flashes. "Look, Martial Uncle Du is here. I heard that the sect master hasn't definitely agreed to let Du Xiaofu become Elder Gu Qingyang's disciple. So, it's not certain whether this Martial Uncle is Martial Uncle or not." Swoosh. While everyone was discussing, their gazes were fixed on the sky in front of them. A purple-robed figure swept through the air. He looked to be 17 or 18 years old. He always carried a broadsword on his back. On his resolute face, there was a deep and clear gaze. This purple-robed youth, apart from Du Xiaofu, naturally, there was no one else. Du Xiaofu's arrival immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Numerous shouts resounded from the crowd. It was obvious that there were quite a number of female disciples screaming. Ripples rippled in the eyes of many as their hearts were moved. Big Brother's popularity is not low now. I'm afraid that he's not below Yin Machin and Si Ruofeng. Judge Hao, who was at the front of the crowd today, said to Qiao Yingmeng, Benyu, Mu Jiejia, Mo1, and the others beside him. Then, he looked at Du Xiaofu descending on the square and waved his hand. That's for sure. Our world society can only grow stronger with President's popularity. There are already many people who joined yesterday. Gu Zhangyu nodded and said. He was extremely respectful beside Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, Mo1, and the others. If he wasn't a senior figure of the world society, he knew that he wasn't qualified to stand together with these senior brothers and senior sisters. Although the world society was established in the ancient heaven sect for a very short time, Gu Zhangyu was undoubtedly a senior figure. Because of this, Gu Zhangyu's status in the outer sect had soared these days. With Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejia, Mo1, and the others as his backers, it was enough for the deacons of the Manchu to be somewhat polite to him. President is facing a formidable opponent today. I wonder if President can win. Qiao Yingmeng was quite worried. If it was someone else, she wouldn't be worried. But facing Sima Muhan, she couldn't help but be worried. Especially when she heard from her master that the eldest young Miss Sima Muhan's talent could be said to be monstrous, which made her even more worried. President is also not weak. His strength is unfathomable. I'm afraid that he didn't use his full strength yesterday. I'm afraid that no one can be sure who will win or lose. Mo1, who rarely spoke, said. Big brother definitely won't lose. I have confidence. Judge Hao nodded. His eyes were filled with determination, as if he had full confidence. Judge Hao, I heard that you bet all your assets on President. Mu Jiejia glanced at Judge Hao and said with a smile, I hope President can win. Otherwise, someone will go bankrupt. I believe that big brother will definitely win. Judge Hao said with unswerving determination. However, on his fat face, within his straight eyes, there was a hint of worry in his gaze. Judge Hao had indeed bet all his assets, including all the energy copper talismans he had obtained in the giant rock space. If Du Xiaofu lost, he would be in trouble. Du Xiaofu's figure landed on the ground. His purple robe fluttered, stirring up some dust. His clear eyes swept across the audience. Hearing the shouts from the surroundings, he smiled bitterly and nodded. Then, he nodded towards Judge Hao and Qiao Yingmeng who were in the front row. Suddenly, he raised his head and felt a gaze staring at him from not far away. Looking over, Du Xiaofu saw Sima Muhan raise her beautiful face slightly. Her quick-witted eyes were glancing at him. Her light purple eyes were filled with confidence. Du Xiaofu ignored Sima Muhan, but he didn't dare to be careless in front of this girl. He pretended that he didn't see Sima Muhan's gaze. Then, he looked at the elders' seats on the high platform and cupped his fists to salute the sect master and the elders. As the disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang, his status in the ancient heaven sect was extraordinary. Even in front of the sect master, Du Xiaofu didn't need to salute him at this time. Humph, I'll deal with you in a while. Seeing that Du Xiaofu didn't intend to pay attention to her, Sima Muhan couldn't help but feel angry. She pouted and slightly clenched her fists. Well, everyone is here. Let them begin. Sima Taxing said to Elder Hu Sankuan beside him. Chapter 661. After nodding at Sima Ta-Xing, Elder Hu Sankuan stood up and walked out. As Elder Hu Sankuan walked out, countless gazes around the Sky Marshal Square began to boil. Everyone knew that the long-awaited final battle was finally about to begin. Seeing the surrounding gazes and the quiet square, Elder Hu Sankuan walked to the front of the high platform and swept his gaze across all the spectating disciples. At this moment, hundreds of thousands of ancient heaven sect disciples were looking at Elder Hu Sankuan with respect. Among all the elders, Elder Hu Sankuan's reputation and status were definitely not ordinary in the ancient heaven sect. After sweeping his gaze across the entire square, Elder Hu Sankuan's gaze finally landed on Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. He said, Sima Muhan, Du Xiaofu, your final battle begins now. Boom! As Elder Hu Sanquan's voice fell, the entire square began to boil. Everyone looked at each other with anticipation. Feeling the gazes around him, Du Xiaofu slightly raised his head and looked at the densely packed figures around him. After all, he was also a young man, so he couldn't help but feel a little excited. Stinking brat, let's begin. Just as Elder Hu Sanquan's voice fell, Sima Muhan's graceful figure moved. Suddenly, a jingling sound rang out from her white wrist. As the hand seal formed, a dazzling mysterious rune gushed out from Sima Muhan's palm. The light was dazzling, and finally, it condensed into a golden patterned demonic leopard's shadow. Aoo! The golden demonic leopard phantasm roared like a living creature. As a vast and mighty pressure descended and spread, the enormous phantasm pounced towards Du Xiaofu in a lightning-like manner as it roared like a muffled thunder. This is the golden heavenly leopard's beast ability on the heavenly beast list. I didn't expect little Muhan to have comprehended the golden heavenly leopard's beast ability to this extent. Following the appearance of the huge demonic leopard shadow, the elders and protectors on the high platform were all experienced and knowledgeable people. Immediately, their expressions changed. Beast ability? Du Xiaofu's eyes twitched slightly. At the same time, he waved his hand and formed a hand seal. A dragon's roar could faintly be heard from within his palm, and a scarlet cloud dragon's shadow condensed. The scarlet cloud dragon's beast carried a shocking might and directly charged towards the golden heavenly leopard's shadow. Bang! The two types of demonic beasts were both ranked on the heavenly beast list. As the beasts collided, a rumbling sound immediately sounded in midair. Along with the explosion of countless symbols, their auras suppressed the sky and shook one's soul. Two demonic beasts' shadows. And heaven and earth. The two people who had attacked in the arena stood tall and straight, but they did not move or sway. They only looked at each other, and the expression in their eyes became much more focused. The Black Cloud's Scarlet Wyrm can. I didn't expect that brat Du Xiaofu to have so many tricks up his sleeve. On Devil's On's Mudo Heaven's Lu Mu's Devil, Mu's Lu's Shadow Muhan's Lu, too. In a short instant, Sima Muhan's figure once again turned into an afterimage and directly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Runes flickered in his light purple eyes. A terrifying profound energy was like a storm, instantly surging with Sima Muhan as the center. Accompanied by the trembling of space, a palm print immediately condensed in front of his delicate hand. Phoenix Cry Seal. A tender shout came out from Sima Muhan's delicate mouth. The terrifying energy palm print in her hand directly smashed down towards Du Xiaofu's head. Boom! The moment the palm print appeared, a huge energy pressure immediately spread out, causing the weaker disciples in the crowd to feel their profound energy stagnate. A terrifying power spread out, causing the surrounding space to tremble as if it was a spatial tremor. The ground shook, and if it wasn't for the talisman array, it would have already cracked open. That vast and mighty power made people dumbfounded. Phoenix Cry Seal. This is one of the Manchu's top martial skills. It doesn't have any ranks. The stronger the comprehension, the stronger the power. It's a secret of the Manchu. Even among the inner sect disciples, there are very few who have the qualifications to cultivate it. Many of the surrounding spectators were stunned, and some of the weaker inner sect disciples couldn't help but speak out. As the terrifying palm print fell, Du Xiaofu's figure stood tall like a boulder. Under the pressure of that terrifying power, his body didn't move at all. His gaze was fixed on the graceful and charming figure that was flying over. Feeling that terrifying power, Du Xiaofu didn't expect Sima Muhan to be so tyrannical. She was actually able to condense such a terrifying palm print with just a raise of her hand. Whether it was speed or power, Sima Muhan's attack was impeccable. It was a perfect fusion. Du Xiaofu could even feel that the profound energy in Sima Muhan's body was exceptionally dense. It wasn't something that an ordinary person's profound energy could compare to. It was also at this moment that the ground beneath Du Xiaofu's feet shook violently. A loud roar that sounded like a dragon's roar came from his mouth. It was like the roar of a divine elephant. Roar. A domineering aura swept out, looking down on everything. In a short moment, Du Xiaofu condensed a fist print. Buzz. With the sound of wind and thunder like the sound of Sanskrit, the fist imprint was accompanied by an imperceptible trajectory and fluctuation of runes. In the end, like a meteor colliding, it fiercely collided with Sima Muhan's palm imprint. Bang! A low and dull sound immediately resounded like thunder. The space seemed to be instantly distorted by the pressure. The huge roar resounded like thunder in the air. Walala, turbulent energy ripples spread out. The entire surrounding space trembled rapidly. The space ripples formed huge waves that rippled in all directions. A large number of broken runes were dazzling, like gorgeous fireworks. The terrifying energy spread out, causing one's heart to tremble in fear. It was as if a disaster had arrived. Such a terrifying fist print and palm print dissipated almost at the same time. Big Dipper storm. A tender shout rang out as Sima Muhan's beautiful figure revolved. In that instant, runes flickered in her eyes, and from her graceful and charming figure, an exceptionally dense profound chi burst forth. Accompanied by dazzling runes, it transformed into a gigantic energy storm. Vaguely, the energy storm was accompanied by the pressure of lightning and thunder. In an instant, it directly enveloped Du Xiaofu's body, as if he had been prepared for it. The terrifying attack that Sima Muhan had just launched was actually just a trick. Sima Muhan knew that the Phoenix Cry seal just now shouldn't be able to completely deal with Du Xiaofu. Her real goal was this attack. Walala, the terrifying energy storm swept out. The energy was vigorous, the runes surged, and the imposing aura suppressed the sky. It caused the surrounding space to distort. The terrifying power was enough to make one's hair stand on end. In the square, everyone broke out in cold sweat for Du Xiaofu. Even the elders and protectors on the high platform had their gazes focused at this moment. The energy storm swept out and enveloped the collapsed space. It spun as if it was swallowing the sky. The dazzling and endless runes suppressed the world. It was extremely terrifying, causing Du Xiaofu to be unable to move. Rock descends to the ninth heaven. Just as Du Xiaofu was engulfed by the terrifying energy storm, the golden light in his body suddenly bloomed. A pair of golden rune wings condensed on his back, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged rock race. It was as if a real golden-winged rock had descended. Boom! The wings spread out, powerful and domineering. A terrifying aura overflowed. The golden rune wings on Du Xiaofu's back flapped and swept out, wanting to destroy the sky. In the terrifying storm, the wind and clouds surged, as if a divine punishment had descended from the heavens. A golden-winged rock, like a living creature, was overflowing with light. It was like a rock spreading its wings and soaring to the ninth heaven. Rumble. The two collided and entangled. The sonic boom was like a deep thunder. A series of dazzling runes gushed out, and the space seemed to be overturned. What a strong pair! The onlookers were shocked. Many elders and protectors on the elders' seats were deeply moved at this moment. The golden-winged rock is not only similar in shape, but also in spirit. Incredible, really incredible. This is hope, I finally see hope. In front of the high platform, Sima Taxing looked at the golden figure flapping its wings in the terrifying storm. His glass-like eyes were also filled with extremely violent fluctuations at this time. However, the fluctuations in Sima Taxing's eyes disappeared in a flash, and no one noticed it. Rock descends to the ninth heaven, destroy. Amidst the terrifying confrontation, a clear shout abruptly rang out. Immediately after, within the terrifying energy storm, Du Xiaofu's golden talisman wings flapped, emitting a dazzling golden light. Golden talisman runes swept out like a blazing sun. A tyrannical and fierce energy aura soared into the sky like a volcanic eruption, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Walala, the terrifying energy storm was on the verge of collapse. In the end, it cracked under the corrosion of the domineering golden runes, and then it was finally forcibly broken. But at the same time, the golden rune wings were immediately obliterated, and Du Xiaofu's figure escaped at the same time. Walala, the runes all over the sky were shattered, and the dazzling light poured out into the sky. Countless people around were dumbfounded as they watched the gorgeous scene above the square. Under the gorgeous appearance of fireworks, everyone knew that the energy contained was as terrifying as destruction. The terrifying power made a large area of space squirm and tremble rapidly, and the earth kept rumbling. Then, everything dissipated, and the two figures fell from the sky at the same time. After taking a few steps back, they each stabilized their bodies. The space was completely silent, deathly silent. No one had thought that the two of them would cause such a huge commotion after exchanging just 2 moves. Martial Uncle Du, you can do it. The eldest miss will win. After a short silence, deafening cheers and shouts resounded throughout the square. There was no doubt that both Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu were very popular among the disciples of the ancient Sky sect. More importantly, the wonderful battle and strength of the two had deeply shocked all the disciples who were watching. This chapter is very difficult to write. Chapter 662. The two of them are so strong. Many of the elders and protectors on the high platform were also shocked. Seems like I've underestimated you. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu and pouted. You do have the right to make me use my full strength. As soon as she finished speaking, a dazzling light surged out from Sima Muhan's slender hand. The light was dazzling and a dazzling long sword was held tightly in her hand. The talisman engravings on the sword shone as if it was alive. It attracted the energy of heaven and earth, and a mighty pressure enveloped the square. Boom! At the same time, Sima Muhan's beautiful face became serious. Talisman engravings flashed in her light purple eyes. A majestic aura that was not inferior to Si Ruofeng and Ji Aoming's aura spread out like a sonic bomb. It made people's hearts tremble. The terrifying energy storm accompanied by the energy of heaven and earth was like a hurricane. It was so magnificent that it made people tremble. And all of this was caused by Sima Muhan's Xian Qi and the extraordinary sword in her hand. Martial King Nirvana Realm. Underworld Phoenix Sword, high-grade Taoist artifact. At this moment, the whole square was shocked. Countless eyes were trembling. Sima Muhan's cultivation had reached the Martial King Nirvana Realm. Looking at Sima Muhan's age, an 18 or 19-year-old Nirvana Realm cultivator could only be described as a demon. The Underworld Phoenix Sword was a famous high-grade Taoist artifact in Gudian Manchu. It was rumored that the Underworld Phoenix Sword was made from the remains of the strong Phoenix race. It was accompanied by the power of the beast. Among all the high-grade Taoist artifacts, it was a king-like existence. This is Junior Muhan's true strength. It seems like she didn't use her full strength back then. In the crowd in the square, Ji Aoming looked at the square. His eyes were filled with surprise and helplessness. It seems like the outcome is about to be decided. Du Xiaofu should be defeated. He won't be embarrassed. In the elders' seats, many elders and protectors were shocked. They already knew the outcome of the battle. No matter how strong Du Xiaofu was, how could he be compared to Sima Muhan? That demonic girl was the best of both families. Among the same generation, how many people could be compared to her? At this moment, Elder Gu Qingyang's ruddy face also became serious. His clear eyes revealed a hint of worry. This is troublesome. Martial King Nirvana Realm. In the plaza, Du Xiaofu was facing the energy storm that was spreading out from Sima Muhan's graceful body, and had to envelop the golden profound qi to resist it. Du Xiaofu could only smile bitterly at Sima Muhan, who was at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm. He had been unable to detect Sima Muhan's true cultivation, but the cultivation of Martial King Nirvana realm was definitely beyond Du Xiaofu's expectation. With such cultivation, coupled with Sima Muhan's strength, it was enough to compete with Yin Machin. I know you haven't used your full strength. Now, use your full strength. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu. She shook the Hongming Heavenly Phoenix sword in her hand and channeled the energy of heaven and earth. It was powerful. Not a weak doctrine weapon. Not a bad sword. Looking at the Hongming Heavenly Phoenix sword in Sima Muhan's hand, Du Xiaofu's eyes moved slightly. His expression turned solemn, and a green-gold light burst out from his hand. Boom! Suddenly, the sky shook, and the energy of heaven and earth surged and gathered. The green-gold light faded, and a green-gold longsword appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand. A domineering aura filled the air, and a clanging sound was heard. The green-gold longsword looked ancient, but it was very agile. The arc of the sword was elegant, and the green-gold light was shining. The runes were flowing, and it was natural. What a powerful sword! It's definitely not weaker than the Hongming Heavenly Phoenix sword. When the tyrant shadow appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand, the gazes of the elders and protectors on the high platform changed. With the eyesight and knowledge of the elders and protectors of the ancient heaven sect, the domineering aura in the tyrant shadow could not escape their prying eyes. With the tyrant shadow in hand, Du Xiaofu's body was enveloped in a golden halo. At this moment, the aura of the complete martial lord realm, which was close to the peak, was completely released. Waves of profound qi rippled, and the tyrant shadow channeled the energy of heaven and earth. The runes spread, and the sky started to tremble. Looking at the tyrant shadow in Du Xiaofu's hands, Sima Muhan's light purple rune eyes rippled. Her beautiful eyes tightly stared at Du Xiaofu, her eyelashes slightly raised, and she said, as expected, you haven't used your full strength. Then let's see if you can receive my Seven Heavens Shadow Sword. You'll know after you try. Du Xiaofu's eyes turned into golden runes, and he was no longer careless. Sima Muhan's strength was beyond his imagination. He had to go all out against Sima Muhan, who was at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm. Whoosh! As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, Sima Muhan moved. Her graceful and seductive figure flashed, and her figure swept out. With an extremely mysterious arc and lightning speed, the rainbow underworld heavenly phoenix sword in her hand shook, and a sword light swept towards Du Xiaofu's lower abdomen. Pointing to the heavens, one of the first sword techniques of the Seven Heavenly Shadow Sword. This is the ultimate skill of that little girl Muha's grandmother. It is said that it is definitely not below the Bright Saint Sword manual of our ancient heaven sect. On the high platform, seeing Sima Muhan's move, Elder Hao Zongwei immediately exclaimed. At this moment, the elders and protectors' gazes immediately became nervous for Du Xiaofu. Elder Gu Qingyang and Yuan Li were no exception, and their gazes focused slightly. At this moment, Du Xiaofu gazed into the distance as he watched the sword light sweeping towards him. His feet floated in the air, and his movements were unpredictable. His arms slightly expanded, and his posture was completely different from ordinary martial arts and sword techniques. However, intentionally or unintentionally, he directly avoided the sword light in front of his lower abdomen. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's posture changed again, and he unleashed a sword technique. Several sword lights swept out, and immediately wrapped around Sima Muhan's sword move. Sima Muhan immediately felt that her sword light was wrapped by Du Xiaofu's sword light. Suddenly, there seemed to be a special magic in the sword light, which directly resisted and obliterated the terrifying energy on Sima Muhan's sword light. It was as if the sword light had plunged into a quagmire, and it could not affect the opponent at all. At this moment, as the sword light in Du Xiaofu's hand swept out, Sima Taxing's glass-like eyes suddenly changed color. Elder Gu Qingyang's clear eyes, which were filled with worry, were also filled with doubt. This seems to be the flower-parting willow in Master's Bright Saint Sword manual. How long has it been since junior brother mastered it? Yu Wanli was shocked and stunned. What junior brother used turned out to be the Bright Saint Sword manual that Master asked him to practice a few days ago. When Elder Gu Qingyang asked Yu Wanli to practice the Bright Saint Sword manual, Yu Wanli had not succeeded in practicing it at all in the past few decades. It was said that in the entire ancient Sky sect, the number of people who could practice the Bright Saint Sword manual would definitely not exceed the number of 1 and 5 fingers. It could be imagined how difficult it was to practice the Bright Saint Sword manual. You actually practiced the sword technique of the Bright Saint Sword manual? Sima Muhan's charming face changed slightly in surprise. It seemed that she had also dabbled in the Bright Saint Sword manual. The long sword in her hand suddenly changed, and the sword move suddenly changed. A dazzling rune erupted, and the sword tip drew a strange arc in the void. It immediately broke free from the suppression, and a sword light took advantage of the situation to point directly at Du Xiaofu's chest. What an ingenious sword technique! Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with admiration. Sima Muhan did not use too much qi just now. She just relied on the ingenuity of her sword technique to break free from the suppression. Du Xiaofu also seemed to understand the changes in Sima Muhan's sword technique. The sword tip immediately changed, and the sword tip continuously moved 3 times. Each point was directly in front of Sima Muhan's sword tip. Every time the sword tip moved slightly, it was able to erupt with beautiful runes. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's power was clearly inferior to Sima Muhan's, but for some unknown reason, the 3 points of his sword tipped directly and strangely dissolved Sima Muhan's sword. This is the Yang Pass 3 stacks of the Bright Saint Sword manual. Du Xiaofu, that brat, mastered the Bright Saint Sword manual. At the elders' seats, there was finally an elder who could not help but be shocked. One must know how difficult it was to master the Bright Saint Sword manual. Sima Muhan also focused her gaze. The treasured sword in her hand continuously changed. The sword tip trembled, sometimes swinging the sword straight, sometimes slicing horizontally, sometimes lifting the sword upwards. They all seemed to be simple sword techniques, but they seemed to contain the great Tao. One after another, the endless sword aura enveloped Du Xiaofu. The sword tip changed unpredictably, causing countless gazes to tremble. Among the spectators, how many of them had the confidence to take on such a terrifying sword technique? Du Xiaofu focused, and the sword aura in his hand swept out. One after another, the sword aura drew a mysterious arc in the vacuum. The green-gold brilliance was extremely bright, as though it was about to drown Du Xiaofu. The sound of wind and thunder resounded, and the sword aura flashed, causing the clanging sounds to ring out. Walala, rays of sword light shot out from the tyrannical shadow sword, causing the space to tremble. Layers of sword light bloomed one after another, as if it could connect with the energy of heaven and earth. Just the pure sword technique contained a great amount of power. Just by relying on the sword technique, it could release a great power and connect with the energy of heaven and earth. Du Xiaofu's cultivation was obviously not as high as Sima Muhan's. But at this moment, in the battle of sword techniques, he was able to overcome 1,000 caddies with 4 ounces. He used softness to overcome strength, and resisted Sima Muhan's suppression. He was even able to suppress Sima Muhan. This battle of sword techniques had even caused everyone to overlook the extremely abnormal level of cultivation that the two of them possessed, as well as the dense and boundless profound energy that they possessed. It was as if this was just a simple battle of sword techniques. Everyone's gazes were involuntarily focused on the two of them, as both of them were using unpredictable sword techniques. The young man and woman in the field were like 2 grandmasters of sword techniques. Their moves were definitely not as simple as simple sword techniques. Chapter 663. Don't look into that sword technique. It will hurt your mind and soul. Some people looked into it carefully and immediately felt a terrifying power enveloping them. Those with lower cultivation immediately spat out blood and their faces turned pale. Sword intent can hurt people. These two people are too scary. Shock surged in the eyes of an elegant and handsome man among the spectators. Soon after, he could not help but sigh as he shook his head and said, just based on this point alone, Machin, am really inferior to them. I did not suffer any injustice in the giant rock space. On the high platform, the expressions of all the elders and protectors changed. All of them were dumbfounded. Sima Taxing Xing sat upright and subconsciously held the armchair tightly. His glass-like eyes were filled with turbulent waves as he stared at the field. At this moment, Elder Gu Qingyang, who was sitting next to Sima Taxing Xing, was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. This kid, how is it possible? How is it possible? Elder Gu Qingyang was shocked to find that the bright saint sword manual that he had practiced for hundreds of years was obviously different from the sword technique that Du Xiaofu was using. They were clearly the same sword technique from the bright saint sword manual, but after careful observation, the sword technique that Du Xiaofu was using was closer to returning to nature. Whoosh whoosh, in Sima Muhan's light purple eyes, the expression in his eyes became more and more serious. The sword light in his hand overlapped, the sword light overflowed into the sky, and the light of the runes covered the space. Du Xiaofu's figure leaped and he used the wave-treading carefree steps. He was as agile as a god and unpredictable. Du Xiaofu's tyrannical shadow sword flashed. The sword light contained the words seal, turn, trap, lead, poke, entangle, and hack. The dazzling azure gold runes bloomed. It was like the golden feathers of a golden-winged rock. Together with the power of the sword technique, the aura was even more domineering and terrifying. The sword technique was continuous and endless. In the entire field, only the two swords could be seen turning into countless sword lights. The rainbow underworld sky phoenix sword was like a phoenix spreading its wings. It was magnificent and beautiful. Tyrannical shadow was like a spirit python, a flood dragon soaring into the sky, and a great rock shaking the sky. Both of their sword moves were extremely profound and could communicate with the energy of heaven and earth. At this moment, the two of them were fighting like two grandmasters of sword skills, causing the elders and protectors of the ancient heaven sect to exclaim in admiration. Both of them have comprehended heavenly talent like this. They can be called monsters. Elder Hao Zongwei's expression changed. The sword light instantly spread out with lightning speed. It was a simple slash, but at this moment, it seemed to contain the power to move mountains and seas. It was enough to shake mountains and rivers, crack mountains and crack the earth, and destroy everything. Gee! When the sword light appeared, it shone with boundless golden light. Layers upon layers of light bloomed, and dazzling azure gold talisman patterns bloomed. The aura was domineering and terrifying. The brilliance of the sword light poured down on heaven and earth. It was like a dragon soaring into the sky, like a rock soaring into the sky. Under the brilliance, there was a terrifying and domineering destructive energy hidden. Under countless shocked gazes, Du Xiaofu's sword directly collided with Sima Muhan's sword tide, and slashed towards the phoenix-like sword light. Chi la la, the sword lights collided with each other, and a long spatial ripple collapsed in succession, but it was soundless and soundless. But it was this kind of silence, with only the flickering of light, that was even more shocking. Sacred sword roar. I didn't expect that guy to have comprehended it to such a degree. The entire square was dumbfounded. There was a deathly silence. Countless gazes could feel that the two terrifying powers were in a stalemate. On the high platform, Elder Gu Qingyang's clear eyes were already filled with shock. Just when the two sword lights couldn't hold on any longer, the golden eyes on Du Xiaofu's face shone with a golden light. Talisman patterns flashed, as if a golden-winged rock was about to spread its wings and fly out. Boom! The golden light in Du Xiaofu's eyes surged, sharp and frightening. Around Du Xiaofu's body, an expanse of golden light flickered like a rising sun. An overbearing and fierce aura suddenly intensified and swept out from within his body. A pair of talisman-inscribed wings suddenly condensed and moved on his back. Majestic light suffused the air, and he was like a rock that flapped its wings and soared through the 9 heavens. Tyrannical Shadow Transformation. The blade of the tyrant shadow transformed into layers of chain horns, and dazzling azure gold talisman patterns blossomed, instantly transforming into an azure gold sword whip separated from the blade of the sword. A mighty pressure intensified, channeling the energy of heaven and earth, nimble and bewitching, dazzling and dazzling. Chi La, the sword light changed, accompanied by the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan. At an unbelievable angle, it directly landed on the sword light phoenix shadow. The domineering power caused the surrounding space to tremble. Ka, the huge sword shadow phoenix shadow seemed to be suppressed by some kind of force. After a stalemate for half a minute, it finally began to crack and shatter, turning into countless broken sword light talisman patterns. Du Xiaofu's azure gold sword whip also began to spin. The light was obliterated and dimmed. What terrifying people! The 2 terrifying sword moves collided. In the end, it seemed that they were evenly matched. The surrounding square suddenly burst into an uproar. What a powerful Du Xiaofu! It's really beyond my expectations. On the high platform, many elders and protectors originally thought that Du Xiaofu would be unable to resist. Who would have thought that Du Xiaofu would be able to resist Sima Muhan's terrifying sword in the end? Ha ha ha, Elder Gu Qingyang laughed. His tensed expression relaxed. After the shock in his eyes, it was immediately replaced by ecstasy. Elder Gu Qingyang clearly knew that Du Xiaofu's comprehension of the holy sword roar was something that even he might not be able to match. His disciple, Du Xiaofu, had only cultivated the Bright Saint Sword Manual for a few days. However, he had cultivated it for hundreds of years. Talent. What kind of talent did he have to be able to comprehend it so quickly? Elder Gu Qingyang knew that this time, he had really accepted a good disciple. That was the holy sword roar from the Bright Saint Sword Manual, right? It seems to have added the aura of the golden-winged rock. That Du Xiaofu must have only just started cultivating the Bright Saint Sword Manual. His comprehension is so strong. His talent is terrifying. He can be called a monster. Hao Zongwei, Hu Sankuan, Yan Mingze and the other elders could not help but exclaim. Martial uncle, how long has Du Xiaofu cultivated the Bright Saint Sword Manual? On the high platform, Sima Taxing turned around and asked Elder Gu Qingyang seriously. Just half a month. He has only cultivated the Bright Saint Sword Manual for less than 10 days. Elder Gu Qingyang replied with a smile in his eyes. Before entering the giant rock space, he had given the Bright Saint Sword Manual to Du Xiaofu to cultivate. Up until now, it had only been half a month. Adding the 7 days that Du Xiaofu had spent in the giant rock space, Du Xiaofu had only cultivated the giant rock space for less than 10 days. This guy, did he really not cultivate the Bright Saint Sword Manual before? He is a monster. Hearing Elder Gu Qingyang's words, the surrounding elders and protectors of the Ancient Heaven sect were completely shocked. Less than 10 days. Sima Taxing Star said faintly as a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. Chapter 664. The eyes on the high platform were filled with astonishment. For the elders and protectors of the Ancient Heaven sect present, they naturally knew in their hearts that Sima Muhan was at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm, while Du Xiaofu was only at the complete Martial Lord realm. There was a huge gap. The two of them had the same high-grade Dao artifact. Although Du Xiaofu's sword seemed to be more extraordinary, Du Xiaofu had relied on the sword technique from the Bright Saint Sword Manual to block Sima Muhan's 7 Sky Shadow sword. Therefore, in terms of sword technique, he had already surpassed Sima Muhan. Du Xiaofu had only comprehended the Bright Saint Sword Manual for half a month. How terrifying was this talent? It was definitely a monstrous talent. It seems like Muhan is going to use her full strength. She can only win if she uses her full strength. Du Xiaofu is really strong. However, compared to Muhan, she is still incomparable. An elder sighed softly. Hearing these elders' words, Elder Gu Qingyang, who had always been protective of his children, didn't say anything. It seemed like he couldn't refute anything. Is this big brother's true strength? It's too terrifying. At the front of the crowd, Judge Hao's fat face was filled with shock. Too strong, Mo1, Running Bull, Mu Jiejia, Xiao Yingmeng and the others looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. From now on, they all knew that the purple-robed youth in the square was someone they couldn't compare to anymore. He was already way ahead. You are very strong. I will stop looking down on you. From now on, I will treat you as my true opponent. Sima Muhan's beautiful figure stepped into the air. A light breeze blew in the sky, and the accessories on her wrist made a crisp sound. Under the brocade dress, her body was wrapped in a charming manner, and there was a hint of charm in her cuteness. I heard that you have 3 unique skills, Sword Art, Pulse Spirit, and Martial Pulse Spirit. Is it time for Pulse Spirit next? Du Xiaofu's eyes, which were glowing with golden light, looked at Sima Muhan in shock. Just now, Sima Muhan's terrifying swordsmanship, if it wasn't for the bright saint sword manual that he cultivated, he was afraid that it would really be difficult to defend against it. My Meridian Spirit is not an ordinary Meridian Spirit. I hope you can still resist it. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu and formed a hand seal. The mysterious runes on the talisman flickered, and the mysterious runes on the talisman erupted. A huge grass-shaped object condensed in front of her. Its entire body was sparkling and translucent. The grass was shaped like a mushroom, as if it was real. Waves of terrifying pressure descended. As soon as it appeared, everyone's eyes trembled. Their meridians and souls trembled in fear. With the appearance of that thing that looked like a mushroom, the profound energy in everyone's body was completely suppressed. Some of the weaker onlookers even felt that their vitality was being sucked out. Heavens, the young Mrs. Meridian Spirit is not a demonic beast, but a blade of grass. Earth Meridian Spirit, that's the legendary Earth Meridian Spirit. The power of a blade of grass is actually stronger than a demonic beast on the heavenly beast list. What kind of existence is that? The onlookers in the square burst out in shock. At this moment, the Meridian Spirit that Sima Muhan activated was actually not a demonic beast's shadow, but a blade of grass. However, the power of that blade of grass was not inferior to the demonic beast's Meridian Spirit on the heavenly beast list. The Earth Vein Soul, the number of experts in my ancient sky sect who have had such a fortuitous encounter can be counted on one hand. Among the younger generation of disciples, there are even fewer who have such a fortuitous encounter. Only Muha has such a fortuitous encounter. On the high platform, the eyes of all the elders and protectors trembled. There was even envy in their eyes. To them, they were very clear about the concept of possessing an Earth Meridian Spirit. It was an existence that surpassed the Beast Meridian Spirit. The Undead Grass Meridian Spirit is also a king-like existence in the Earth Meridian Spirit. Little Muhan is really lucky. Some of the elders were shocked. Sima Muhan's Meridian Spirit was the Undead Grass, which was an extremely terrifying existence. It would be difficult to find a second person in the entire central continent who could possess the Undead Grass as a Meridian Spirit. What a strong Meridian Spirit, it's actually a blade of grass. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows at this moment. Facing Sima Muhan's grass-shaped Meridian Spirit, it was not strange. His own Meridian Spirit was a mountain. However, Du Xiaofu was also shocked by the terrifying pressure from the grass-shaped Meridian Spirit. That Meridian Spirit was extraordinary and extremely terrifying. Sima Muhan stood in the air, her seductive figure wrapped in a long brocade dress. Her eyes were covered in runes, and a terrifying pressure spread out from the grass-shaped Meridian Spirit in front of her. Chi, in a short moment, as the undead grass meridian spirit condensed, it immediately turned into an arc of light and swept towards Du Xiaofu. Sigh, I wonder what kind of demonic beast Du Xiaofu's meridian spirit is. No matter how strong it is, it can't be compared with the undead grass. How can a beast meridian spirit be compared with an earth meridian spirit? On the high platform, all the elders and protectors were sure that Du Xiaofu was going to be defeated this time. However, at this moment, none of the elders and protectors felt that Du Xiaofu was weak. How many of the younger generation disciples could make Sima Muhan activate the Earth Meridian Spirit? One had to know that Du Xiaofu was only at the complete martial marquee realm. If he was at the Nirvana realm like Sima Muhan, how terrifying would that be? Now, even if Du Xiaofu was defeated, he would only be defeated below the innate realm. How many people could have such a terrifying meridian spirit like the Earth Meridian Spirit? That's the legendary Earth Meridian Spirit. I wonder if the president can resist it. At the front of the crowd, Qiao Yingmeng frowned, her eyes fixed on the field. Boom, the field trembled, and the sound of wind and thunder resounded. On Sima Muhan's meridian spirit, the grass-shaped meridian spirit appeared in front of Du Xiaofu in an instant. Circles of dazzling mysterious runes spread out from the grass-shaped meridian spirit. The runes were densely packed, like a lingering divine light, and the pressure was rolling, suppressing forward. The terrifying power of the grass-shaped meridian spirit could destroy everything. It was so terrifying that it made people tremble with fear. Under the countless gazes around the field, Du Xiaofu moved under the suppression of the grass-shaped meridian spirit. Suddenly, there was a dazzling mysterious rune behind him. A sudden overbearing aura shook the grass-shaped meridian spirit, which had just descended, and it also trembled. At this moment, Sima Muhan, who was not far away, seemed to have felt something, and her rune eyes rippled. In a short moment, under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of eyes, a golden five-fingered mountain phantom spread out behind Du Xiaofu. The golden mountain phantom grew and evolved behind him, as if it was given life. Buzz! The five-fingered mountain phantom was filled with golden light, and its sound was like the sound of wind and thunder. Dense spiritual energy spread out, communicating with the energy of heaven and earth, and a terrifying power spread out in the face of the grass-shaped meridian spirit. The five-fingered mountain phantom expanded as if it was real. It was like a king that could not be bullied, and its pressure was rolling, and its aura was like a long rainbow. The multicolored light exploded, and the grass-shaped meridian spirit was directly pushed back. The golden five-fingered mountain phantom looked down at the defeated grass-shaped meridian spirit with the aura of a king. It was constantly growing and evolving, and it could not be provoked at this moment. On the high platform, Sima Taxing's glass-like eyes suddenly flickered, and he could not help but stand up. Oh my God, the meridian spirit! Du Xiaofu also has the meridian spirit. 2 meridian spirits. God is really blessing our ancient heaven sect. After a short moment of shock, on the high platform, a large number of elders and protectors stood up one after another, their eyes trembling. On the contrary, Elder Gu Qingyang's face was filled with astonishment at this time. His clear eyes seemed to be absent-minded, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. His jaw was wide open, and he couldn't close his mouth. Boom! The mountain phantom and the grass of immortality meridian spirit confronted each other. Du Xiaofu's figure merged into the mountain phantom, and golden runes flashed and shuttled, resisting the grass of immortality. The five-fingered mountain phantom was like a supreme being, continuously colliding with the grass of immortality. In terms of the strength of Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan, of course, Sima Muhan was much stronger. However, in terms of the power of the meridian spirit itself, it was obvious that the five-fingered mountain phantom was stronger. Du Xiaofu relied on the power of the five-fingered mountain phantom to suppress the grass of immortality, as if it could crush and suppress all things in the world. Rumble. The king-like grass of immortality was incomparably powerful, and its aura was overwhelming. However, at this moment, the glittering mountain phantom was like a supreme being, and it could not be provoked or resisted. The grass of immortality was gradually suppressed by the mountain phantom. The two meridian spirits confronted each other, and the terrifying aura fluctuations made it difficult for the surrounding ancient heaven sect disciples to breathe, and the chi in their bodies was blocked. Oh my God, what kind of meridian spirit is that? The mountain phantom is also an earth meridian spirit. What a terrifying aura. It seems to be suppressing the soul, chi, and bloodline. The surrounding disciples trembled. This scene was beyond everyone's expectations. This scene, especially for Du Xiaofu's supporters, made them even more excited and excited. I didn't expect you to also have an earth meridian spirit. You really surprise me time and time again. It seems that I can only defeat you with my full strength. The crisp words came out of Sima Muhan's mouth. When the last word fell, her graceful and alluring body still landed on the grass of immortality. Mysterious runes connected with the grass of immortality, and dazzling light poured down into the sky. At the same time, purple light appeared in Sima Muhan's eyes, which were shining with runes, again. In a short time, her eyes turned into a strange crystal-clear purple. Boom! At this moment, the surrounding space trembled for no reason, and a terrifying invisible pressure spread across this part of the world. At this moment, within Sima Muhan's graceful body, his aura suddenly rose to its peak. Today's update is complete. Originally, I wanted to add more chapters to repay the debt, but these chapters are really difficult to write. It's difficult to write more chapters. Lil Yu will definitely make up for the chapters that I owe you in the next 2 days. Chapter 665. A vigorous aura spread out from Sima Muha's body. The mighty aura swept across the sky and connected with the immortal grass. The mysterious runes on the talisman filled the sky, and a supreme pressure descended upon the world. As this mighty life force spread out, the grass of immortality's phantom suddenly shone brightly. Its power suddenly rose to the peak. Rumble! At this moment, the wind and clouds were surging in the sky above the square, accompanied by the faint sound of wind and thunder. Puchi! Around the square, the disciples with lower cultivations spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their faces were pale. It was as if the life force in their bodies was being sucked out. The pressure was irresistible. Greenwood Martial Vein, Human Emperor Heavenly Bearing, gathering the soul of the immortal grass vein in one body, Muha is a monster. Little Muhan's greenwood vein and blood vein are fused. Human Emperor talent is enough to look down on her peers. On the high platform in the square, all the elders of the ancient heaven sect were stunned. Renhuang's talent was frightening. He was already ahead of his peers by a large margin. Little Muhan's talent is too strong. On Elder Gu Qingyang's ruddy face, his clear eyes were also filled with shock. In the entire Central Plains, there were only a handful of talented Renhuangs at the Renhuang realm. Any Renhuang genius was a peerless cultivator in the Zhongzhou state. It could be said that any human emperor talent would not have any accidents. They could grow into a peerless expert in the future. Human Emperor Heavenly Talent, Undying Grass Vein Soul, Junior Sister Muha is a monster. In the entire ancient heaven sect, other than that true little monster and that terrifying lord, no one else can compare. In a corner of the square, Yin Machen's eyes were shining. He looked at the sky above the square with shock. What a strong pressure. I can't resist it. Senior Sister Muhan is too strong. I'm afraid Uncle Master Du will be suppressed. Uncle Master Du is already very strong. Even if he lost to Senior Sister Muhan, no one in the Manchu can compare to him. The whole square was shocked. At this moment, all the Manchu disciples were in a daze. Boom! On the grass of immortality, the talisman engravings were dazzling. Sima Muhan's expression changed. Stepping on the grass of immortality, her body was full of vitality. Divine light covered her, making her look like an immortal. At this moment, under the double suppression of the Grass of Immortality Vein Phantom and Sima Muhan's Greenwood Martial Vein, Du Xiaofu's Golden Five-Fingered Mountain Phantom was finally suppressed. Terrifying symbols erupted, and rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, shaking the surroundings. Among those of the same generation, there was already no one who could step foot here. Sima Muhan suppressed him with a terrifying aura. The previous exchange of sword techniques between the two of them was unpredictable. However, the current confrontation was only about suppression. They did not use too many techniques, only absolute suppression. That kid Du Xiaofu is really strong. I didn't expect him to be so terrifying. He's only at the Martial Lord realm, but he can actually resist Muhan until now. He's really born strong, and his talent is enough to look down on the central region. On the high platform, Elder Hao Zongwei exclaimed in shock. Even if Du Xiaofu was going to be defeated now, it had already proved how terrifying it was. After all, Sima Muhan's cultivation was now at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm, and she was still forced to use all her strength. Rumble, the Grass of Immortality and Sima Muhan kept suppressing. It was like a divine light shrouding the world. The light was dazzling, like a bright moon in the sky. Terrifying and powerful, the aura was monstrous, like an immortal suppressing a demon. The Golden Mountain Phantom was constantly being suppressed and collided, bursting out a string of golden light. The golden symbols seemed to have evolved and bloomed, causing the sky above the square to be dazzling. In the end, the Golden Mountain Phantom was finally unable to resist. It was suppressed by the strong force until it cracked continuously. After a few minutes, it began to crack more and more. Withdraw! Du Xiaofu shouted. He knew that he could no longer resist. If the phantom was seriously injured, he would be in a worse state. He could only withdraw the phantom first. Under that terrifying pressure, Du Xiaofu felt that if he could break through to the initial stage of the Martial King realm, he would be able to resist Sima Muhan by relying on the Five-Finger Mountain Phantom Vein Soul. However, he was only at the peak of the Martial Marquis realm. The phantom of the Golden Five-Finger Mountain Phantom was withdrawn. Under the dazzling light of the runes, Du Xiaofu's figure appeared. Pfft! A mouthful of blood was spat out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. He was greatly affected. Without the Phantom's resistance, the terrifying Grass of Immortality and the Greenwood Martial Veins pressure completely shrouded Du Xiaofu's body. Is Martial Uncle Du still going to lose? The Phantom has been withdrawn. Senior Sister Muhan is too powerful. Du Xiaofu is still a little short. No matter who wins or loses, it is enough to prove that both of them are monsters. What a powerful and terrifying two people. They are both young, but their strength is so terrifying. Two monsters. As Du Xiaofu's Golden Mountain Phantom was withdrawn, all the disciples of the Ancient Sky sect in the Tianwu Square held their breaths and waited. Once again, there was a shocking discussion. In the midst of the discussion, everyone could only sigh and feel regret. But at this moment, who would still think that Du Xiaofu was not strong enough? They could only feel deeply shocked by the confrontation between the two of them. Among the peers of the Ancient Sky sect, who could be compared with these two terrifying fellows? Although he lost in the Du Xiaofu, he is not inferior to Muha's girl. Although he lost, he still won. On the high platform, an elder gave Du Xiaofu such a high evaluation. Although he had lost, it was still a victory. At this point in the fierce battle, Du Xiaofu could not continue to fight against Sima Muhan. The impact of the huge force made his mind dizzy, and his body felt like it was about to be shattered. Especially under the pressure of the surging vitality, a vast and ancient aura spread out, as if it wanted to devour all the vitality in Du Xiaofu's body. You lost. Sima Muhan shouted slightly. The mysterious runes on the surface of her body bloomed and surged. The shadow of the immortal grass directly enveloped Du Xiaofu's body. Under the Greenwood Martial Vein, vitality was surging. No, I haven't lost yet. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's pale face. At this moment, when he could no longer resist, Du Xiaofu felt a familiar and strange aura. That familiar yet mysterious aura had been hibernating in his body all this time. But at this moment, Du Xiaofu felt that the mysterious aura began to awaken in his body under the stimulation of Sima Muhan's surging vitality. Chi la la. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, his body began to emit mysterious rays of light. A magical ray of light jumped out, tightly connecting with his meridians and blood vessels. These mysterious lights crisscrossed on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body. When they finally condensed together, they turned into a light net and directly covered Du Xiaofu. A terrifying aura spread out and swept across the sky. The ancient pressure that spread out from the mysterious light net caused the surrounding disciples in the square to tremble in an instant. Their bodies involuntarily prostrated themselves on the ground as if they were facing a supreme being that they could not resist. Under this pressure, the world around the square was roaring. The aura could swallow mountains and rivers, peerless in the sky. On the high platform elder's seat, Sima Ta-Xing suddenly saw the mysterious light net on Du Xiaofu's body. On his heroic face, his glass-like eyes suddenly changed. Oh my God, this is... On the high platform elder's seat, all the elders and protectors of the ancient sky sect couldn't help but tremble. Then, all the elders and protectors stood together and stared at the square. Their eyes seemed to be about to pop out of their sockets. At this time, Elder Gu Qingyang's ruddy face suddenly changed again. He stared at the mysterious light net around Du Xiaofu's body. His eyes trembled as he muttered in shock, "Martial Vein Spirit Seal, this is a Martial Vein Spirit Seal. Martial Vein Spirit Seal, it's a Martial Vein Spirit Seal." Sima Ta-Xing slightly clenched his fists and his robe fluttered. After the shock, his handsome face was filled with a smile. Rumble, at this moment, the wind and clouds surged in the sky. Dark clouds gathered for no reason. Lightning flashed and thunder roared faintly. The pressure made all the disciples in the square tremble. The president still has a trump card. The president hasn't lost yet. Mo Wen, Benyu, Mu Jiejia, Qiao Yingmeng, Hao Bian, Gu Zhangyu, and the others all clenched their fists. Their bodies trembled and their eyes flickered. On the square, Du Xiaofu's golden eyes turned into thunder and lightning. It was as if there were two terrifying thunderballs in his eyes. Du Xiaofu's body was covered by the mysterious light net. Dazzling lightning radiance burst out from his body as a terrifying and domineering aura violently spread out, causing the surrounding space to rumble. Rumble, under the terrifying pressure, the entire sky martial square trembled violently at this moment. A large space wave swept out. This scene was extremely terrifying. Not only did it startle the surrounding disciples of the ancient heaven sect, but even Sima Muhan was moved. Her eyes, which were covered with azure light, kept blinking. At this moment, Sima Muhan also didn't expect that Du Xiaofu would still have such a terrifying method. Even in her maternal grandmother's house, although there were only 2 or 3 people among her cousins who could suppress her, in terms of age, there was a huge gap between them. Among those of the same age, no one in her maternal grandmother's family could compete with her. Chapter 666. Feeling Du Xiaofu's terrifying aura, Sima Muhan's eyes, which were covered by the green light, were filled with shock. Sima Muhan could feel that Du Xiaofu's terrifying aura was majestic and desolate. It was not to be challenged. Under that terrifying aura, it was as if something terrifying was awakening in Du Xiaofu's body. It made her feel uneasy. That kind of uneasiness was definitely something she had never felt before. It was as if she was facing an awakening supreme being. Break! Lightning flashed in Du Xiaofu's eyes and the surrounding area was overflowing with electricity. Du Xiaofu shouted and punched out, directly blasting the grass of immortality's shadow in front of him. In front of Du Xiaofu's fist, electric light overflowed in all directions, domineering and destructive. With an unstoppable force, he blasted the illusory image of the immortal grass. Oh my god, Du Xiaofu also has a hidden martial vein in his body. That martial vein seems to be awakening on its own. It's extraordinary. On the high platform, all the elders were shocked. He destroyed the grass of immortality with one punch. How shocking was that? Pfft. Sima Muhan spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression and posture were still like that of an immortal. His entire body was wrapped in green light, like a bright moon, transcending the mortal world. Immortal subduing demon. Boom. A palm print was waved out. Sima Muha's palm print was wrapped in a cyan light. Wherever the palm print passed, the space became barren, destroying everything. Even the air was completely destroyed. Break! Du Xiaofu shouted. He raised his palm and a domineering aura exploded. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The lightning in the surroundings connected together like a sea of lightning, forming a huge sun. Du Xiaofu soared into the sky like a thunder god descending to the world. Boom! Their palms collided and emitted a bright light. The green light was dazzling and the lightning flashed. They were in a stalemate again. Ah, there were many screams in the square. At this moment, under the pressure of Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan, those with lower strength, under that unstoppable and terrifying pressure, meridian spirit and martial vein were continuously suppressed, unable to resist. On the high platform, all the elders and protectors were shocked. The battle between the two of them had caused such a huge commotion. Swoosh swoosh, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. Hu Sangkuan and Hao Zongwei landed on the square. They changed their hand seals and a huge light screen covered the square. It blocked the pressure from Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. Only then did the disciples who were not strong martial veins. They felt better. Walala, in the sky, the two figures were in a stalemate. Sima Muhan was gradually covered by the green light like a bright moon. Du Xiaofu was shrouded in lightning. He was like a thunderball in the sky. The sea of lightning flashed around him. It was so dazzling that it made people tremble with fear. This was no longer a battle of physical strength. It was a battle of two martial veins. It made the space in the sky change. Heaven and earth were about to collapse. The mist spread and ripples spread in all directions. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, the two of them were in a stalemate. Time passed slowly. The whole square was silent. Countless eyes were fixed on them and no one dared to blink. At this moment, even the elders on the high platform were not sure who would win in the end. Although Sima Muhan's cultivation was higher, Du Xiaofu's terrifying lightning aura and martial vein spiritual seal could even suppress Sima Muhan's greenwood martial vein. Qi La, after a full 15 minutes, the dazzling green light of vitality and the overbearing destructive electric light spread out. The bright moonlike green light gradually dissipated and cracked. Waves of terrifying electric light shuttled through space and poured into the green light, destroying the vitality. Puchi, Sima Muhan's delicate body fell to the ground. A mouthful of blood was spat out from her mouth. Her eyes that were covered by the green light gradually turned back to light purple. Her face was as pale as ash. Sima Muhan looked at the terrifying thunderball in the sky. Her delicate body trembled. Her eyes closed slightly and she fainted on the ground. Lost, senior sister Muhan lost. The surrounding square was stunned. Sima Muhan, who seemed to be winning, was defeated by Du Xiaofu in the end. In the air, the terrifying thunderball gradually faded. Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the square. The strange and mysterious light net on his body was also gradually converging. After Du Xiaofu's body landed on the ground, the lightning in his eyes slowly disappeared. His face was also as pale as ash and his eyes were faintly golden. Puchi, wisps of pale golden blood overflowed from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Then his body collapsed on the ground and fainted. His body was still faintly flickering with lightning. On the high platform, all the elders looked at each other. This result seemed to be beyond everyone's expectations. Whoosh whoosh, Elder Hu Sangkuan and Elder Hao Zongwei, who were already present, immediately came to Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan's side. The two elders looked dignified. After checking the aura of the two people, their dignified faces relaxed. They nodded slightly to Sima Ta-Xing and the others on the high platform, indicating that the two people were fine. Sect Master, these two people have fainted. Who won and who lost? Elder Kong Zhonglei came back to his senses and asked Sima Ta-Xing beside him. Do you still need to ask? Little girl Muhan fainted first. Naturally, she lost first. Elder Gu Qingyang recovered from his shock. Seeing that his precious disciple had fainted, he immediately rushed down the stage. Muhan fainted first. Counting it, Du Xiaofu is the winner. Sima Ta-Xing nodded and said to Elder Kong. Du Xiaofu wins and becomes the #1 inner sect disciple. As Sima Ta-Xing's voice fell, Elder Kong's voice, which contained profound energy, resounded throughout the square. Boom! As Elder Kong's voice fell, the surrounding square suddenly trembled. Boiling sounds gathered and resounded throughout the square. Strong, too strong. If we really fight in the giant rock space, I'm afraid that the one who loses in the end will be me. In the crowd, Yin Mo Chin sighed and shook his head. A wry smile appeared on his handsome and elegant face. If junior sister Muha had used her full strength that day, I would have been in a miserable state. Ji O Ming also smiled bitterly and sighed. With the strength of the two of them, no one on the bronze board can contend against them. Although it's a bit shameful, it's the truth. Si Ruofeng also said self-deprecatingly. Good job, Martial Uncle Du. We will always support Martial Uncle Du. The surrounding square was filled with waves of sound. The shouts were endless, and the deafening roars of excitement were endless. Especially those disciples of the ancient sky sect who had long supported Du Xiaofu. They were all so excited that their faces flushed red. For a time, the entire sky martial square was filled with noise and excitement. In this battle, Du Xiaofu had created his own miracles time and time again, contending against Sima Muhan. The process of the duel was full of ups and downs, making it impossible for people to guess and tremble in fear. And this battle had also won the hearts of many disciples of the ancient sky sect for Du Xiaofu. Originally, many disciples thought that Du Xiaofu was only relying on the name of Elder Gu Qingyang, but now, they had all become Du Xiaofu's staunchest supporters. Perhaps this was how people were. When a person surpassed a group of people, most of them would be jealous and suspicious. But if a person surpassed a group of people by a large margin, then that person would become a god in the hearts of this group of people. What a Du Xiaofu! He really surprises me time and time again. On the high platform, Sima Ta-Xing looked around as he listened to the boiling shouts around him. Finally, he looked at Du Xiaofu, who was being examined by Elder Gu Qingyang. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile as he said, "In less than 20 years, I'm afraid that brat will be able to surpass me." On the high platform, many elders were stunned when they heard Sima Ta-Xing's sudden words. The head of the ancient sky sect, Sima Ta-Xing, was an expert whose name shook the entire central province. To the entire central province, he was a person who stood at the peak. In the hearts of all cultivators, the head of the ancient sky sect, Sima Ta-Xing, was a mountain that could not be climbed. And at that moment, Sima Ta-Xing actually had such an evaluation of Du Xiaofu. If that were to spread out, it would likely shock the entire central province. After the duel ended, the unconscious Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan were taken away from the Heaven Martial Plaza by the elders of the Manchu. Only then did the spectators on the Heaven Martial Plaza slowly disperse. In the next few days, the entire ancient sky sect was talking about the spectacular duel between Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. There was reverence in their tones. The brilliance of the process was incomparable. It exceeded everyone's expectations several times. No one would have thought that when facing Sima Muhan's earth-vein spirit and mortal emperor heavenly talent, Du Xiaofu would appear out of nowhere and turn the tables. And at that moment, Du Xiaofu's name began to quietly spread. During the several days that Du Xiaofu was still unconscious, he probably didn't know that his name had already spread throughout the many empires within the ancient sky sect. It even began to spread to the entire central province. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.